Howdy, folks. Your host, Double J, back here for another Fridaze. Welcome back. We got a real barn burner here on deck tonight, of course, as always. And got returning guest here. And before I introduce myself, my co-host, Nick, once again, that's JJ Vance, host of Operation GCD, and perhaps more notably, not the vice president. Nick, welcome to Fridaze. How you doing, sir?
All right. I think I'm doing okay. My voice is a little bit better than it was earlier, so that's a plus.
We're both falling apart today, huh?
Yo, I woke up and just coughed up something, and I was going to say to myself, what the fuck was that? And nothing was coming out of my mouth. I was like, yo, what the fuck's wrong with my throat? I'm like talking to myself in the bathroom so I can hear how fucked up it is. It's like, what just happened?
Yeah. The I'm blaming mine on allergies.
Thinking about the allergies. Yeah. I was actually wondering about that because I know it was fucking up Headless yesterday when I was on the show with you.
Coming in hot with some allergens. We had a real barn burner earlier today before we get started. What else is going on in the Occult Rejects besides the barn burner we had today with
if people didn't catch it, definitely go catch that show that we just did earlier. That was fucking it was like 3 hours, I think, like on the dot almost.
Yeah,
it was a lot of information.
You don't even feel like it, right? Because I was like, holy shit, they were at 3 hours.
When it went to 2 hours, I was like, holy shit, it's been that long. And then I was like, all right, maybe it's like 2:25, 2:30 now as we're wrapping it up. And I saw like 3 hours. I was like, holy fuck.
Yeah, dude.
Did not feel like that long at all.
Great convo.
Yeah, but besides that, I mean, what did I have? Did anything drop this week? We had the time slips actually dropped today. If people haven't checked it out on audio for the Occult Rejects and video on my end as well. And you were in that with Rye, correct?
Yes, sir. It's a excellent conversation with former guest here at Fridaze and Occult Rejects, Rye from Codega's Codex of Curiosities. That's a lot of words, but it's a great show.
Yes. But yeah, we had that. And then we got this weekend we have the High Strangeness at Dudleytown with the Cult of Conspiracy. We both did too. If you remember that one.
That was a really I'm not gonna lie to you. Like I say these are real barn burners, but that was a real outstanding show with those gents there at Cult of Conspiracy. I wasn't familiar with their work, but I like their style.
No, they when they cover topics, they do it pretty thorough. So that's why I even asked them to come on, because I knew it was going to be solid work if they came on. So
good call, because I listened to one of their shows in preparation just to see what they're like, get a little flavor of their show. I mean, I enjoyed it, but I'm saying like they came in hot with some good stuff there.
Yeah, me and Teresa have covered a few topics on their show before as well, and it's always gone well. Like even if I'm bringing up something that they don't even know, somehow they even have stuff to add to it. It just always works out fun.
Julia does a lot of work over there on Saturdays. I hear.
Yep. She's got like a day on their rotation. I'm not exactly. I think they do like a show or two every day. I think she has like one of those spots or something like that.
Yeah, I think she said Saturdays. Julia from Cosmic Peach, who was also with us this afternoon for the Austin Wade Picard Occult Rejects show.
Yes. But anything else? I think. Let me see what I have coming up next week. If anything that we did. Oh, Scientology and Battlefield Earth with Rick Andy drops next week.
Coming in hot. That's a great one. I really enjoyed that one too.
Oh, that was good too. Yeah. That, and then we have Venus symbolism with symbolic studies. You weren't there for that. That was like the occult stuff.
I listened to that one. That was a good one. I enjoyed that one.
Yeah. But we got that coming up.
Was that with the one with Rob? No, that's not Rob. You said symbolic studies. Oh, I actually. Yeah. I keep on missing his shows. He was on there recently on one of the Occult Reject shows. We always joke. We were joking because we're always kind of seeing each other in passing and whatnot.
Yeah. He shows up in a lot of the lives. We're actually scheduling a Nazi symbolism with him soon. So.
Oh well, count me in for that one, sir.
All right, yeah, sure.
Nazis. Now you're talking my language.
Yo, when he suggested it, and then I was like, "Yo, say no more."
And sadly, you won't be able to make it for this one coming up on Operation GCD Live, the Occult Rejects end of month review on Operation GCD Live. We're doing an occult and esoteric review of So I Married an Axe Murder on the 25th, but you'll be there this coming Wednesday, right?
I may not even be home next week because, the 20th through the 24th for sure. I'm going to be at the summit, but then I may actually have to film something a day or two more after that. But yeah, that's something I could advertise too. I'll be going to the Mount Pilot Summit next week to film the UFO alien fucking thing going on over there.
That was my next question for you.
Technically, it could be possible this time next week. I could have met Randall Carlson at this point.
You know, what's that called?
This I don't even know the name of it. The summit.
Yeah, I looked for it before. I'll look for it again here. You know, maybe, or if you find it,
I
let
should
me know.
probably should have somebody send me a link.
Yeah, I'll put it up if you find it.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
So that you'll miss that one because of your Mount Pilot escapades of the UFO conference. That sounds exciting, though.
Yeah. Should help at least me people with my filming equipment.
I was about to say it sounds like an exciting opportunity to get some your equipment out and operational.
Yeah.
But you'll be joining Operation GCD on Wednesday, the 18th, though, right? For the
yes,
occult and esoteric review of the film Ghost Story, where author Jonathan Mitchell has outlined how this story, written in 1978, contemporary to the Son of Sam, right after his arrest, David Berkowitz's arrest. This dude has inserted a bunch of elements of the Son of Sam tale and the Process Church at the time there into this horror story, right? Ghost Story. So that'll be a fun one there on Wednesday.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
And then I also got a couple quick plugs before we go to our guest here this evening. Those are the next two Operation GCD lives. And this is coming up on Sunday for Sunday's Operation GCD Patreon. The link's in the description here on my link tree. This is Meet Nathaniel Bar-Jonah, Operation GCD Sundays Volume 3. Oh, shoot, it is 3. Almost said 2. The legend of, I wish it was 2. I wish I'd forget about, I wish it was 0. I wish I'd forget about Robert the Doll and Buffalo Jared both. But the legend of Nathaniel Bar-Jonah, this is the fellow that homicidal, kid diddling, cannibalistic, psychopathic serial killer that I came face to face with in Great Falls, Montana back in 2001, and may or may not have served me human meat burgers at the Hardee's on Central Avenue on the late night back in Great Falls in the summer of 2000. So that'll be a fun-filled adventure. And then the following week, the detective who worked that case, who busted Nathaniel Bar-Jonah, the homicide detective for Great Falls, Montana Police Department, would later go on in life to write what I would call the seminal study on, thus far at least, on the serial killer you've never heard of, Edward Wayne Edwards. So those are my exciting plugs coming up here for Operation GCD. And then, of course, as you said, I'm always participating over there at Occult Rejects, and I always appreciate the invite, sir.
Oh yeah, of course, it's always great.
We have some excellent conversations again, like today. I'm a big fan of Austin Wade Picard. He's at his age, I certainly wasn't coming up with the ideas or having the interest of the subjects he's interested in today. So I like to see the youth of today. He's not, obviously he's a man, he's an adult, but I'm saying much younger than myself. So, and I certainly wasn't into that stuff at his age. So
I do wonder about that. If we had the technology at our fingertips at that age, would we be doing the same stuff anyway?
Yeah, I've actually thought the same thing myself because I try to, and I'm not saying I mentor folks, but I try to, I'm happy to answer questions and whatnot. I have a number of folks of, ranging from 25 to, I think, young 30s there in Austin's case, I believe. I enjoy sharing notes with because I'm excited that they have such an interest in these subjects at such a young age. Because I didn't. Not to this degree, right? I mean, you know what I mean? Not where I'm having a podcast or sharing information with people, reading about subjects, sure, right? But but that free flow of information, I do think, is key, right?
Oh yeah. And
then
out of his mouth.
What's that?
He's got a lot up in there. He retains a lot.
Dude, I like it. So last plug here before we get to our guests, and I apologize for any long-winded delays here. I got Operation GCD Thursdays Patreon coming up this Thursday, the 19th at 8 p.m. And that's the anatomy of satanic panic, kind of unpacking, the whole satanic panic narrative, the major characters that we see in there perpetrating these things, and comparing the propaganda to the actual real world events that were transpiring, contemporaneously, in a kind of a chronological fashion. But obviously, this Muppetized fellow right here, Michael Aquino, is going to play a major role in that series. So, speaking
of satanic panic, I do have Stephen Flowers coming on my show this Sunday from the Temple of Set. So if you guys want to get your film of satanic panic, definitely check that out.
Yeah, he's going to tell you all about it.
Yes. He's going to talk about
He's going to tell you it's a panic, though, right?
See, I asked him to come on and talk about ones. See what he has
to say. What I mean?
Yeah.
Well, and it was interesting. I was already writing this series when Gina Black, which I thoroughly enjoyed her positions on and opinions on everything. I don't want the whole world to agree with me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, the chick was on for cemeteries, and I don't think she's like a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah, but she was coming at, she seemed like she was interested to hear more about the West
Oh,
Memphis
yeah,
Blues
yeah,
and
but
how
I'm
they
just,
actually did it, and it wasn't
expect that lady
Satanic
to-
Panic, right?
I think anything else than what the news told her. I just wouldn't have expected that. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, for sure. But, I just think that's part of, that conversation, in my opinion, kind of encapsulate where my motivations in that series is, there's very reasonable, intelligent folks in this day and age that think it was a Satanic Panic. And you don't have to be a member of the Temple of Sat to have that opinion.
Yeah.
It's because they've subscribed, and I don't fault folks for falling for the magic show, but it is a magic show. And speaking of magic shows, there's an expert tonight here on magic shows of a Hollywood Bob Cocaine variety. How you doing, sir?
Good. How's it going?
Excellent. Phil Zozzaro, welcome back for some Fridays here. Now, you were with us a few weeks back, and I couldn't have enjoyed it more. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, it was a lot of
Welcome
fun.
back.
Thank you for having me.
Well, any man knowledgeable in the life and times of Bob Cocaine Evans is somebody I want to talk to, and you have a lot of details on those subjects, which always interests me.
I know a little about the man. I mean, definitely. I mean,
I thought you knew what he had for breakfast.
Just, I mean, an interesting figure. I mean, between his long career in show business, between being like at one point he was a voice actor in New York for like radio shows, and then between then there was kind of like that period when he was working for his brother with the clothing company. And
Charles is an interesting character himself, right?
Yep. And well, Charles is the one who figures into his the cocaine bust.
Right. Well, him and Charles, they do everything in life, and it's Charles and Charles Jr. that fund and produce Johnny Depp's first directorial debut.
Wow. Well, it's weird enough. So I was just looking. So I just finished The Fat Lady Sang, which was the sequel to The Kid Stays in the Picture, and I'm looking at the picture. Because it's based off of Evans after he has his stroke, like 3 strokes that almost killed him back in '98.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
Yeah. And then I'm looking at the picture of his son Josh, his son with Ali McGraw, and I'm like, I've seen this guy. Like, I know I've seen him, and I'm like, all of a sudden I decide to look up the movie Ricochet with Denzel Washington and John Lithgow. Good '90s movie. And he plays John Lithgow's like right-hand guy in it. And he also played Tom Cruise's brother in Born on the 4th of July.
I knew that one. I didn't realize he was in the Ricochet, though. But it is interesting that he plays along Cruise in an Oliver Stone film. I find that epicenter of activity with the Evans family kind of odd.
Yeah. Well, and then you think of, I mean, Oliver Stone's relationship with Arnon Milchan, the Israeli spy, who produced JFK and a few other movies. I mean, he got around in Hollywood.
Weird epicenter of these producers out there, isn't it? I mean, obviously, Cocaine Bob is a central figure, but when you look at Milchan, how do you pronounce his name again?
It was Milchan, Milchana. His first name is Arnon, Arnon.
These names I tell you, Phil, they need new names. But him, like folks like Khashoggi, Adnan Khashoggi, who's a Scientologist. You know what I mean? He's doing a lot of the financing around this era.
Yeah,
so
one of the
Bob ain't the only one, but they're all a little bit suspect.
I think Dodi Al Fayed, I think Princess Di's lover, think was a movie producer.
Another good example. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Is he part of the Bin Laden? Not the Bin Laden family. Is he part of the House Assad?
Fayed, I think, was related to Khashoggi.
Yeah, they're both part of the House Assad, right along with the Bin Ladens, a part of the House Assad, I believe.
Yeah, I think you're right on that.
Yeah.
A
lot of Saudi influence. Of Saudi influence.
Yeah, I mean, Milchan. I got a book, I think, for Christmas that was about him and his career and not only Hollywood but being like an Israeli intelligence asset. And I believe he was involved with. I want to say it might have been something that's relevant to today. I think might have been the theft of nuclear material that helped set up the Dimona power plant, the one that may or may not have been bombed today by Iran.
Well, I'm going to have to, once again, sir, I'm going to make an accusation that you are a special agent of the Dewey Decimal System, and a man of a lot of knowledge. Not only is it books, you have obviously knowledge of current events, and I definitely respect that. I have no idea what you're talking about, though. You're going to have to help me out here.
What, with today's events, or
yeah, I missed all of that. Yeah, I'm going to need some. This sounds interesting, though.
Well, just with Israel bombing Iran, I think late last night into today, and then Iran responding. I believe Israel supposedly killed like a few of the high up Iranian military, and it might have even killed the negotiator, for the, like for, I guess, whatever accord they were going to try to come to maybe. The whole thing that Israel's been maintaining is that Iran is building nuclear weapons or is trying to start a program, the same program that supposedly they've been trying to work on for 30 years. Because I literally found an article that someone had referenced on Twitter today, but I fact checked it, from Chris Hedges back in 1995, saying Iran is close to a nuclear weapon. And they've been,
that's what I was going to say. Isn't this just a narrative they keep rehashing? I feel like we're just doing the sequel to this.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, and at one point, I mean, I think back in, what was it? I think when it was Obama's administration, you had the Stuxnet, that whole virus thing that was I think, unleashed by Israel to kind of incapacitate Iran's, networks and whatnot. And then Mossad had killed a bunch of their scientists, which apparently, again, Mossad was in Iran again. It's not good. And, you start hearing, oh, Trump didn't know, or that, who was it? Witkoff, who was like his negotiator, might have betrayed him. I'm like, that's BS. I mean, I'm so tired of people giving Donald Trump mulligans on like everything. He didn't know. He knew. I said, Donald Trump's biggest supporter was Sheldon and Miriam Adelson. He's gotten bailed out by the Israelis time and time again. And the Adelsons.
What's his golf handicap? Maybe he needs those mulligans.
I don't know. I don't know his golf game. I know he probably pads the numbers. I mean, I heard he's a good golfer, but who knows? It could be like Mr. Burns on The Simpsons, constantly cheating.
I'm impressed by his ability to consume the volume of fast food he does and achieve the physical performance of walking around a golf course and still swinging that club.
Yeah.
There is a monumental effort.
Yeah.
It sounds like this is not good. These are not good things that are occurring here, Phil.
No, it seems like it's going to be, just kind of like a free for all soon, depending on who's going to back Iran. They said Iran has, hit areas of Tel Aviv that they hit. I think they might have hit Israeli. I don't think the Mossad, but I think they might have hit the IDF headquarters. I mean, Netanyahu left. He literally didn't even stay around. He left, hopped a plane to Greece, and now giving press conferences saying that the Iranian people will be freed from their government because they want to.
Right. He's just stoking shit, huh? This Netanyahu fellow, is that the guy from Pennsylvania?
Netanyahu is. I've heard he's from Poland initially.
Didn't he go to high school in Philadelphia?
Wouldn't surprise me.
Am I getting that wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Here's the deal. I might be making that up, Phil. I might be making that up. Nick's looking at me like, don't ask me, dude. You might be making that up. I agree. I might be making that up. But so where did he flee off to?
The chat, sorry.
He took a plane to Greece, according to what I saw that was shown on social media. They had tracked this plane. He bolted. He's barely hanging on by a thread for power. Like I think the government they voted not to vote them out. I think there was like a referendum or something, some vote in Israel. But he's been battling corruption charges for a little more, like over 5 years. I think going back to at least 2019. Like the last time he ceded power was, I think, like 2019. And it relates to taking bribes from the Adelsons, amongst others. Ornan Milchan is mentioned in if you ever see, I mean, I dropped it. I don't think it gets that far on Twitter because of the algorithms, but I've dropped the copy of the BB files almost every day. But
I don't think I've seen that. I do often, comment, and we see each other on Twixter, so maybe the algorithms are shutting that one down.
Oh, I sent it to people DM after a while, and even that wasn't working. I had to email it to some people.
Well, I assume it's because this man's deep embedded into something here in America. Between 1956 and 58, and again between 63 and 67. His family lived in the United States in a suburb of Philadelphia, where he attended high school and college.
Yeah, and Pennsylvania is where that nuclear material was stolen. That there was some
shit.
spying, yeah. And like I said, there's the Milchon connection. They are connected.
What nuclear material are we talking here? What is this?
I think the acronym was NUMEC, NUMEC. I think it was like the late 60s, early 70s. Milchon, I know, was involved, if not with the theft, but the proliferation of it. And I think like one of the Israelis' like key intelligence assets was involved in it. It's been talked about a few times here and there. Like, and then you had the fact that when what Damona was capable of, there was a guy named Mordecai Vanunu, who was, I believe, like a scientist, exposed it, and they basically kidnapped him. They did like a rendition and had him kidnapped. I think he was in London, and basically kind of like put him, I mean, they didn't kill him, but they might as well have. I mean, I think they put him in some sort of solitary containment, almost kind of like the CIA did with the guy named Yuri Nosenko back in the 60s, kind of just kept him away from everybody, but surveillance, you know, because he held that inconvenient knowledge. But I think it might be in 20 years.
All of this sounds like business as usual, Bill. It sounds like Iran-Contra and never stopped. And in fact, we're back to, what is this, 1980 or 2025? What year is this?
2025, but you wouldn't know it sometimes. I mean, I feel like it's the same cast of characters. It's the, the secret team that Fletcher Prouty wrote about, sort of types, and the ones that Daniel Sheehan mentioned with the Christic Institute. Like, it's all these guys. There's always these reappearing people. That's how someone like a guy like a Howard Hunt keeps appearing. You know, even though he retired from the CIA 2-3 times. Whatever it was, between writing books and then later on leading the plumbers.
Well, I was going to say, wouldn't you classify him in this whole category of this Material Assistance Command crew that was the Operation 40 kind of crew, the folks that were training the anti-Castro Cubans? These are all like an element of these agencies and operations that they recruit from. From my opinion, they comprise these things within things like Bill Colby's Material Assistance Command. Bill Colby, the CIA director, OSS guy, then sets up Operation Gladio. Then he comes home. He gets to be, he gets up in the ranks. He goes to Viet fucking Nam, and then he makes, through the Material Assistance Command, he creates the Phoenix program. And then, I agree with McGowan. A lot of the shit we see in America today is Operation Gladio and the Phoenix program come home. And these are all Bill Colby's, babies. These are the things he made, right? So when I see it, that's what I'm saying. Like, a lot of this shit just seems like it's all continuation of that network, right, within that framework, and down to the point where Bill Colby's son was a primary witness against Orenthal James Simpson and the murders of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. Why the fuck is Carl Colby one of the primary witnesses in this murder trial, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's crazy. I wasn't a fan of that documentary that he did about his dad, The Man Nobody Knew.
Yeah, I thought that was dumb. I thought it was real dumb.
Yeah, I mean, I remember reading about Colby's death years ago. I was only in high school at the time, but I was like, I just remember the name, and I was like, former CIA director. You can't find him, and then eventually, when you find his body, it's a place you already like dredged in the water, and it made no sense. I mean, and Colby. So one of the other things Colby was, he was also legal counsel for the Nugan Bank in Australia.
Yes, sir. Not only was he legal counsel, he was on that board.
Yep. And then later on considered to be, on the Franklin, the Franklin Credit Union, the scandal with that at one point.
When I first started looking, I would like to hear your thoughts, and Nick's, because I know he's gone on this subject. What was your thoughts when you first discovered Bill Colby is in league with a former Green Beret from the same Material Assistance Command Phoenix program, John DeCamp? And they're the ones uncovering the Franklin scandal. Get the fuck out of here. That was my reaction.
Yeah, so I read the Franklin scandal probably like 20 years ago. Is that
DeCamp's book?
The Franklin The Franklin cover. The Franklin scandal's Nick Bryant.
Nick Bryant, there we go. I like that book. But the DeCamp book.
I actually did, and again, it was just one of those things off Twitter. a couple of years ago, St. Patrick, who does Garrison, the magazine that does like a lot of like investigative stuff from like people like in our the non-mainstream alternative media type, and he asked me to like basically compare the two books. So I wound up doing like reading the Franklin's cover up again and comparing that to the Franklin scandal, and just kind of, there was a lot of differences. I mean,
I agree, but I'd like to hear some of your thoughts on these differences.
I mean, I respected DeCamp, but I think he trusted Colby. I mean, it appeared like, as the way the book was, is like, oh, he really gave a lot of credence to Bill Colby. And then again, it's like, okay, is it because he, had an association with him that went so far back? I mean, the copy of the book I read, which was after like Oklahoma City and all these other things, gets in how DeCamp, I think, represented the Montana Freemen at one point, one of those militia groups. And, he said that
he's got some suspect activities, Phil. He's got some real suspect activities.
Yeah, at one point he says Colby had told him something not to go meet with one of the journalists who was looking into the Clinton scandals. This guy named Ambrose Evans Pritchard, who actually wrote one of the Clinton books I read. And
please repeat that name, Ambrose Evans Pritchard.
Pritchard, yep, you got it. And he wrote, it was called like The Secret Life of Bill Clinton. They called it like instead of like Whitewater, it was like the Blackwater scandal. So they mentioned Oklahoma City. Go ahead.
Oh, was this funded by the Mellons?
I don't know. I don't know what Pritchard was. I think they tried to associate him with it, but he mentioned Oklahoma City. He talks about Kevin Ives and Don Henry, the boys on the tracks. He talks about Terry Reed, who was the guy training the Contras out of Mina. And it was a good book. I mean, but I think he even mentioned Colby too. But
this guy's Colby a legit economist, journalist, right? On an economy pieces, huh? What's this guy do?
Yeah. I think guy?
Let me bring it up. He's over in Brussels in 1991, huh? We were talking about Brussels in the early 90s today, weren't we, Nick?
Yes.
With the Dutroux stuff and the Solar Temple stuff, right?
Well, yes. If I'm not mistaken, Brussels is where the Mossad took out Gerald Bolt, the guy who was, I think he was a scientist, he was a weapons guy, and he was going to build Iraq's doomsday gun. Yep, that's him.
Yeah, he joined the Telegraph in 91, serving as Washington correspondent and later European correspondent in Brussels. I'd like to see what date he got there.
Yeah, he was kind of one of those journalists who was the bane of like the Clinton White House back in the 90s, when spin really kind of got, its modern kind of existence was the press secretaries during Clinton's time. But yep, they had it, The Secret Life of Bill Clinton. So Colby said, do not trust him, Pritchard, and that Clinton, he's useful to us. That's how he said it to DeCamp, which I was kind of surprised about. Like, why would you trust, someone like him? Yeah, it was Regnery, and I know a lot of people say Regnery, it's right wing. I mean, that's where I read Partners in Power by Roger Morris, and that book was brilliant in terms of.
So you highly recommend this one, huh, Phil? This is The Secret Life of Bill Clinton. I have not read this book, so I'm gonna have to check it out.
I think it's a good book. I think it's a good jumping off point. But you know what? To me, I've read books that have been positive about Bill Clinton, and I've read ones that say, hey, there's a lot of dirt there, and sometimes you have to, and again, you talk about something like the Mina drug running. There was a great site, I don't know if it's around as much anymore, Progressive Review, and they had a whole thing about the Clinton scandals, and the guy who writes it is more like a progressive Democrat, and he always viewed Bill Clinton as like a centrist, like he was more like, would go whatever way, whatever was favorable to him, to his career. And I think Mina, in the end, the fact that they were running this operation out of his state was kind of like, that's the cross he had to bear if he wanted to go further in office. I mean, at that point, he could have just remained there was no limit to how many times he could have been governor of Arkansas. I think by the time by the time he ran for president, he was already governor. He ran in 78.
3, right?
Well, he won, lost in 80 to a guy named Frank White, which I always kind of find funny because I think that was one of Biggie Smalls' aliases was Frank White, and Walken's character in King of New York. And then he won in 82, and then I think afterwards it was like 86 and 90. So like he was like a 4-time governor, but like 3 times in a row the last time around. Right. And just like George W. Bush said, I'll finish my term. He didn't finish his term. He ran for president in 92. He wanted to run in 88, but they told him no. And Dukakis ran because I think in the end, the powers that be were kind of like, yeah, no, it's H.W. Bush's turn. And, he got
Dukakis was the one that shit, right?
Yeah. I mean, well,
he was the guy to fail, right? You know what I mean? So I got to ask you about the Oklahoma City theory out of this book. But before that, you mentioned Mina and Clinton. So, Barry Seal's infamously this guy who's flying in the Medellin, the coke for the Mina, Arkansas stuff as part of those operations, right? He's not the only one, but he's the one that's known about most, right? Yeah. So again, this is the Medellin coke. This is the early 80s. This is the same time old Cocaine Bob is doing business with the Medellin cartel's number one dude in America's wife out there in Los Angeles. His co-conspirator in the murder of Roy Radin, Karen Greenberger, who seems to have her own Iran-Contra cover name of Laney Jacobs. So these are all the same things, and it is the connecting principles of this cocaine. But Barry Seal there is interesting because with the greater sense of the cocaine funding this Iran-Contra stuff, like here's the deal with Barry Seal here. Besides being in the civil air, here's my positions and issues I'd like to bring up to your attention and see what your thoughts are. Barry Seal is in the same Civil Air Patrol with Lee Harvey Oswald, and David Ferry's their leader. This is 1954 New Orleans. He later goes on to do all these other things with the drug running, everything else like that. He's doing a lot of these things through the 20th Special Forces Group. We see that same National Guard Special Forces Group pop up in around Waco, Oklahoma City, all the Operation Pac-On stuff. So that's interesting, right? But relative to all the drug running stuff, I started looking at, some of the genealogy of some of these folks. How do they get in these circumstances? I would argue both Lee Harvey Oswald and Barry Seal knew each other in that Civil Air Patrol as teenagers because they were born into a system. So looking at both their heritage, both of their forefathers were officers in the Revolution, which seemingly would qualify those men for membership in the secret society that started America, the Society of Cincinnati. But Lee Harvey Oswald and Barry Seal, that is. So Barry Seal's third great grandfather was second great grandfather was a captain in the North Carolina chapter of the Society of Cincinnati, in the officers of the wars of 1776. And he's third cousins with Jimmy Carter. So when all this height of Iran-Contra stuff goes down through that same man, right? So, who's telling who what to do, right? If he's the hereditary member in the secret group and Carter's simply a member as a result of being the president, right? Despite them being third cousins through this original member, Seal, Captain Joseph Seal, I believe was his name, or William Seal. Who's really calling the shots in Iran-Contra? Is it the president or is it his cousin who might have some rank on him in the secret society?
Yeah, I mean that's crazy. First time I've heard of that, and it's probably something we won't hear about in Ken Burns's next
that's hilarious
miniseries.
That's hilarious because Headless sent me a message earlier. He said we got to start stalking Ken Burns to force him to do a miniseries on the Society of Cincinnati.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some of the Civil War. I haven't seen really much of anything else of Ken Burns, but I feel like he's that, one of those guys, one of those peddlers of the narrative. Kind of like
he's the go-to. He's the go-to guy for your hardcore kind of deep dive into historical subjects like the Civil War, and I think he's done baseball and some other shit like that.
Well, like we were talking about, I mean, maybe even Howard Blum and the true crime and history stuff with his books, or Lawrence Wright, who I've mentioned before, in his books. I said, I think every now and then
he's sus, isn't he? Lawrence Wright?
Oh, definitely. They Prime Day just released a book, I think within the past 6 months, The Manchurian Journalist. That's supposed to be about Wright's work. And, I mean, he's a guy, I've read a handful of his books. Remembering Satan, which was about satanic panic, and it was in the Northwest, and it was these two girls who one accuses her dad, who's a cop. Actually, no, they might have been sisters. Yeah, sisters accusing their dad, and then dad's like under hypnosis, like, yeah, no, I could have done it. And it's like, okay, you think you could have? I mean, yeah, it winds up like going after, and again, it could have happened, or it could have been one of those cases to kind of try to poison the well for all these other ones where, I mean, I believe I went from being, it didn't happen after seeing the movie years ago, Indictment, the McMartin trial about, that whole thing, to reading
Oliver Stone and James Woods.
James Woods, yeah. And then
the right-wing hero.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Flew with a couple of the 9/11
the man who
hijackers.
could have saved us from 9/11, right there.
Yep. I remember watching that and then reading so many different books where I'm like, no. And even with the book I read a handful of years ago, We Believe the Children, it was one of the review books I read. And I was like, yeah, the guy just says, nope, all these kids, they were manipulated by psychiatrists, didn't happen. And it's like, all it would take just is one to poison the well, just to say, you could say 9 out of 10 didn't happen, but that 10th one did. I said, there's enough in these stories, especially with McMartin, even if it wasn't like Virginia McMartin or Peggy Bucky, Ray Bucky's behavior is very
out of this world, creepy.
And then you have the fact that they did find tunnels underneath when they excavated it, and that was something that, what's his name, I think would pop up in Gunderson. Ted Gunderson would pop up in investigating that.
I got a lot of words about what he did in life too, but for the McMartin stuff, it was the objective evidence of sexually transmitted diseases that sold it for me.
Yeah, how can kids make that up?
That many?
Yeah, in an area that was pretty affluent, like Manhattan Beach was money. That's, you think these kids, they're going to have poor hygiene, you can't do that. Like STDs don't just pop up out of nowhere.
For sure. And before we circle back to the Oklahoma City stuff and Timothy McVeigh, because I'm deeply interested in PACON stuff these days and how all this stuff connects to Idaho and the white nationalists up there. But I skipped over Nick. I want to get your thoughts on, when did you discover the Franklin scandal, and what were your thoughts on the authors who have conveyed these stories to us?
That one dude who was like kind of like the kid with Bonacci.
Yeah,
that's his, if I'm even saying his name right. Who was that one
Correct,
guy?
Sir. Paul Bonacci. Yes, sir.
Yeah, who was the guy who that might have been the who was the author you mentioned earlier?
John DeCamp or Nick Bryant?
Not Nick Bryant. Yeah, John DeCamp. Was that him that was like making videos about it and everything, and like kind of making it a spectacle and showing himself go to court and like trying to get like answers?
That's him. Yep. He was in that Conspiracy of Silence documentary, right?
I think that was just an early version. That was an early version of a fucking piece of shit Alex Jones.
There you go.
That's all.
And from a guy, I just want to point this out because again, I think so much stuff gets overlooked when we consider things such as that. And John DeCamp knew this man right here. I mean, the non-Muppetized version, but they knew each other. You know what I mean? Yeah, Michael Aquino. So we're talking about these magic show and psyops and stuff. I mean, this is kind of the dude at the epicenter of literal ceremonial magic stuff and the Satanism Thelema business and the army psyop stuff. So, talk about mind war, mind fuck, whatever you want to look at there. I mean, that's what we're looking at, I think.
They're actually two different beliefs.
The
Temple of Set and OTO, two different beliefs. It's not even the same.
It's an offshoot. I'm saying they had
I wouldn't even say that.
Really?
I'm sorry. I'm just being totally honest with you. I do not think they did. I don't agree with Aleister Crowley shits. I don't know how it's an offshoot.
None of them do, right? That's why they start their own thing, right? So, but I'm saying they incorporate practices that they learned through the.
And those Thelemic practices started before Aleister Crowley. It's within almost every order that fucks with magic. You're gonna have the same basic practices.
I understand. I just think there's an ode to it within these organizations, especially when you see them celebrate Crowley Moss. Is it Crowley Moss? Is that his birthday, October 12th?
Oh, I don't know who you're saying celebrates that. The OTO does.
That's what I'm saying. These Thelemic organizations seem to venerate that as like almost a saint's day. You know what I mean?
Why does the other order do that?
What's that?
Why are you saying the other one does too? I'm not sure what his birthday had to do with it. That's what I'm asking.
No, I'm saying these Thelemic organizations, even if these practices go from before Crowley, which I totally understand, is what I'm saying is they still pay homage to Crowley despite the, he's not the inventor of these practices. Is what I'm saying. I realize that. I'm saying they pay homage to him as if he's a saint within the system.
Not all of them think that, actually.
Well, I mean, I don't know if that's an accurate depiction. That's certainly the way, my perspective and understanding of what I've seen and read. I don't know if they're going to say that. That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying I don't think there's a.
No, there's
chant.
ones that are actually openly
chant
saying
that.
the guy is wrong.
No, I understand that. I understand that aspect. They have their own views. I understand everyone has their own views on how these things need to be done. That's why we see so many offshoots of organizations. Mormons too. Again, it's the ceremonial magic aspect that everyone has their own perspective of, it seems.
Well, they don't even think he crossed the abyss, some people. So then he has nothing to say.
Well,
you know what I'm saying? So then what is there to listen to?
Is that the Temple of Set people? Is that the Kino people?
Tons of people actually believe that too.
Because I've read the one book I have read on Aquino that he wrote. He seems to like Crowley. He seems to like Crowley.
I'm just saying, there's people that do not believe that guy actually did anything that he said he did.
I'm fine with that. I'm just saying. I think Aquino's. I'd put him in the Crowley department, in my opinion.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know about him, but I'm just telling you, there's people that do not believe that guy is everything.
Well, I have no doubt. We saw that one with that whole war he had, right? With that formed the one. What's the Typhonian folks, right?
Yeah, I don't know why that exactly formed.
But I'm saying they had a beef, right? They had an offshoot beef because him and that leader were, they were going at it, right?
I have no idea. I wasn't there.
Kenneth Grant, is that his name?
Yes.
Oh, there's infamous tales of these things. That's what I'm saying. I get the fact Crowley is not liked by all. I'm just saying the practices and homage are, to me, seem to permeate these organizations, these offshoots. Again, I understand not the direct offshoot, just like Scientology is not a direct offshoot of the Agape Lodge. However, it's influenced by and admitted so by numerous folks. But I'm just saying, like, it's not a direct, they're not doing the same thing, right? Like the Strangites, for example, within Mormonism, when they went north to Wisconsin and found their own mound and their own golden plates, right? Like, it's not the same thing, but it's it's essentially the same thing. You know what I mean?
Well, I could tell you, I could tell you, OTO is going to use the Knox formula, and I could tell you other organizations aren't, because that's his own formula. So now, if you want to start getting into specifics of magical formulas, like you're saying, I could actually tell you you're wrong. You wouldn't know because you haven't been in one of these places. I'm not trying to be a dick, dude. I'm just telling you the truth.
Well,
you haven't put in a place, and you don't know anything about magic and formulas and rituals. Everybody has their own little flair.
I'm just commenting on what I read in the Aquino book that he wrote. So that's all I can comment on. That's the Temple of Set. That's the guy I was
all the same thing.
I don't doubt it.
And like a lot of people get lumped up into the same thing when it's not the same thing.
Well, again, the only thing I'm commenting on is statements folks make of their own accord, right?
And most of them don't know what they're talking about when they do make those statements.
Well,
it's like
a lot of folks
X-ray glasses and I can see what's going on inside of these buildings that I've never once been.
Well, no, I hear you. I see what folks say about Mormon temples. I've been in Mormon temples, so I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, ignorance.
That's why I'm saying I'm only stating things that folks of their own accord. My statements of, for example, LeVay in relationship with Tuesday Weld are only statements that LeVay makes himself. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I will be the first to say I don't understand their magic, nor do I care to. Right? You know what I mean? It's not my thing. Right?
Same.
Can I make 2 quick points?
Absolutely.
Jimmy Page, we know, loved Aleister Crowley.
Well, that's what I'm saying. And, most of these people tell us they do, right? That's what I'm saying. Like, I focus on the people that are willing to tell me, like, I do some Crowley. I like Crowley stuff. To how those machinations of the Crowley stuff work out, I don't know necessarily, right? But I'm willing to take their words for it.
They said what was the rumor with what's his name, John Bonham's death, that they said that Jimmy Page was performing some sort of ritual the night
his house.
Yeah. That Bonham, the night Bonham died from alcohol poisoning or choking to death on his own vomit, something like that. That they said that
my uncle's
performing a ritual.
My uncle's friend actually was literally in that dude's house, and he said the guy had the fucking shit all on the floor and everything. He had the fucking stuff drawn on the floor. That guy was no joke into that shit.
And then I just finished, I think it was last week, based off of one of your shows, The Occult Elvis.
Yeah, with Miguel Connor.
Well, yeah. So I got to the review company that I've been with the longest. they send out like a list, and they let me choose, and it was on the list, and I was like, oh, I'm putting in, and I got it, and I read it, and it was like one of the best parts of it is the one religion that Elvis thought was bullshit, Scientology, which of course his wife and his daughter both joined.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I kind of brought that up to Miguel because there's an infamous story of where Elvis had it out with Elron. I don't know if there's validity to it, but again, it seems to be somewhat valid because, you know, Elvis did seem to have some early relations with Scientology along with Priscilla, right? So, and she was a lifelong Scientologist.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, that was
he didn't like it, did he?
Book. No, he didn't. He thought it was just, I mean, just a lot of bullshit.
Here's what that concerns me. You all go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, here's what that concerns me because, you know, this whole offshoot of the Scientology, this process church situation, right? He's way too close to that circumstance for me to, you know, for him. And I'm just saying, like, he's got a lot of friends that have that same, like, at least forward attitude towards Scientology at the time because he's his spiritual guide, Elvis' spiritual guide, and that would travel with him was Jay Sebring's hair salon business partner and ostensibly drug trafficking business partner. Were you aware of that?
What? Geller?
Give me 1 second, sir. I will bring up his name for you. I am terrible with names, but we learned this from Miguel Connor. Like, I had never as much Manson stuff I'd read about. Again, Manson and I are, you know, we're distant cousins, but we're Maynards from Pikeville, Kentucky. You know, so I've had a number of interests over the years, even looking into the Manson stuff. I'd never heard any connections to Elvis. So when Miguel Connor dropped that on us, I was like, what in the world? That's fascinating. I got to look more into that. And there's a lot more to that story, apparently. And here we go. Whoa, here we go. Elvis or Charles Manson, Elvis's hairstylist in the Memphis Connection. All right. So, that's not it. It goes on to say that his let's see here. I definitely don't remember the guy's name. Yeah, Larry Geller. Good. Well done, sir. Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it says, but it was Presley's longtime friendship with Larry Geller that provided perhaps the most interesting and largely overlooked connection between Memphis and the Southern California world that was the settling for the infamous 1969 mass murders of Manson's family of followers. So Geller was a Hollywood hairstylist who worked with A-list celebrities, Frank Sinatra, Paul Newman, Marlon Brando, Peter Sellers, and many others. Now, on that list, I would say all of those folks have been associated with the Manson family. Sinatra, Newman, Marlon Brando, and Peter Sellers, right? Peter Sellers, I don't know if you're familiar with that narrative, right? That the whole, you know, I don't know. He was on some of those videos that he didn't want out, right? They were filmed with Tate Polanski, him allegedly.
Well, one of the stories I read about him, because I haven't seen much with him. I saw Dr. Strangelove, which is brilliant.
Pink Panther.
I've never seen the Pink Panther movies.
Oh, they're massively terrible, but I mean, I've seen it.
And I saw Being There, the one that was written by Polanski's buddy, Jerzy Kosinski, because I know Dana's spoken about him before.
Oh, yes. That's an interesting topic, is it not?
Oh, God, yeah. And then the fact that Sellers in the 60s had, I think they said 6 heart attacks off amyl nitrate.
No shit. Well, there you go. Phil, those were the videos. You know, once again, you know exactly what I'm talking about, sir. Those are the videos that they didn't want out, right?
Yep.
Amyl nitrate's obviously it's prominent within the gay community, I believe. They call it poppers. Is it poppers?
Yeah. They actually initially, when AIDS first came out, they thought it was something related to amyl nitrate poppers.
Here's the deal. I'm not convinced that's not playing a role in destroying folks' immune system. I mean, you're huffing this weird chemical stuff. You mean to tell me that's not going to have long-term effects? I'm not saying it's the direct cause. I'm saying you mean to tell me it's not going to have long-term effects, right?
Yeah, no, definitely would. I mean, but then again,
well, it sounds like Peter Sellers did, right? You said how many strokes you have?
6 heart attacks.
Or how many? 6 heart attacks. Holy shit, dude!
In one instance.
Reminds me of Chris Farley's character from the Bears there in Saturday Night Live, and he was always getting a heart attack, right?
Yep. Yeah, it's I mean, that's insane. Or like I said, Bob Evans had the 3 strokes and was 98, and crazy enough, his right, I think a couple of rooms over, or right next to his room at Cedars-Sinai in California, was Frank Sinatra. Sinatra died right next to Robert Evans. He didn't even know until him and his son were watching the Seinfeld finale in his hospital room, and the news broke in to say Frank Sinatra died. And it was
cocaine's a hell of a drug.
Yeah, cocaine's a hell of a drug. Rick James.
So what do you know about this Geller fella? What's his deal? So like, because he first meets Elvis in '64, and then they become fast friends. He becomes a spiritual guide, mentor. They start traveling. He starts traveling with Elvis. So what's the deal here?
He, they bond over like theological and, esoteric religion, religious discussions. But I know at some point, I should say, based off Miguel's great research, that at some point the Memphis Mafia, the good buddies of Elvis and Priscilla and the Colonel did not like this guy. First of all, they also didn't like the fact that Elvis could get so, pensive on religion and all these topics. And at some point they kind of like,
he's kind of influential, right? So you kind of like, there's going to be certain folks that want to dictate what he's saying to folks, right? So what you're saying makes a lot of sense, I think, in that regard. If I may interject there, sir.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, and this is one of the things as I was kind of like with every book I do that I do a review on, I take notes. And all I could think of is like Elvis, all he wanted was like peace of mind. He wanted like that, mental, just kind of like break. And everybody wants a piece of him, whether it be the Colonel, who basically I heard was a degenerate gambler and died broke, to whatever time Priscilla wanted from him, and his father,
Colonel Tom Parker.
Yep, Colonel Tom Parker.
Was he a Nazi?
I don't know what he was. I know he wasn't American.
Right. No one does, right?
That's not a bad thing.
No one knows what he was.
No, nobody knows. And they said Tom Hanks's accent in the movie was horrific.
But he kept Elvis's career going. Elvis recorded a bunch of albums before he went in the army, and he kept his career going. I mean, this is the dude who was behind Elvis this entire musical career, at least, right?
He was, a big part of it. And then towards the tail end, one of the big influences was a producer named Jerry Weintraub, who later on produced some of Sinatra's shows. And at one point, there's one of the stories, because I read Weintraub's autobiography, which is called You'll Know I'm Dead When I Stop Talking, something along those lines. And it's funny you mentioned Sinatra, because it is allegedly Sinatra who gives Elvis the green light to be back in the biz, if you will, once he gets back from his army service, because a lot of folks were apparently threatened that he was a bit of a wild card, right? So you'll see him come back and do this famous show with Sinatra, but they're both on stage looking all chummy and singing each other's songs and in each other's faces, and I'm like, well, this is a bit weird. So, and I thought that was a bit odd until I found out later how Sinatra was deeply connected to this, the same circle of folks, cultists around the Manson family, right? And so is Elvis. So these relations don't no longer seem as so anomalous to me. Yep. And then now here's another, connection is the fact that Sebring serves as the inspiration for Warren Beatty's character in the movie Shampoo.
Yes, sir.
And Warren Beatty is good friends with Bob Evans.
Cocaine Bob made his career. You are correct.
And also, I believe the guy who wrote the screenplay for Shampoo is Robert Towne, who wrote Chinatown.
You started batting 3 for 3. Not only did he write Chinatown, he was Bob Evans, old Cocaine Bob's go-to script doctor too, right? Like he was his guy. He always wanted to work with him, right? He always wanted to work with Robert Towne.
Mm-hmm.
And Polanski. These were, these were his trusted circle, right? Jack Nicholson, Marlon Brando. These were his trusted circle of folks. He's got a stable of actors that he promoted, directors as well. Coppola. Mm-hmm. It's weird to me. So you see all these people like Beatty, like Towne, like Coppola, all these folks. Cocaine Bob's relations with I just drew a blank. Not Russ Corman. The other fellow that did the Roger Corman. There we go. I was mixing Russ Meyer and Roger Corman. Thank you, Roger Corman. Yep. Everyone gets their start with Roger Corman before they get their Cocaine Bob, chance, right?
Yeah, Roger Corman was Little Shop of Horrors, and just a lot of those cheesy early '60s movies. Yeah, Russ Meyer was he was the one I think who did what was it? I'm trying to remember. Hold on one second. Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. He did the movies with like the big-breasted women. That was Seinfeld. That was the Seinfeld thing at one point too.
Right, they both did, right? Because Corman did those nurses movies too, right?
Yeah. Well, there was a thing at one point where certain directors getting their start had to do either like a slasher movie or did a cheesy like softcore porn movie. Like Ivan Reitman, who did Ghostbusters, did I think it was called Cannibal Girls or something like that.
That's precisely what I'm talking about. See, I see this epicenter of activity surrounding Cocaine Bob, surrounding his buddy Corman, who still, I believe, is alive and very powerful within the industry, or had been in recent years still. And they're the ones giving the start to all these folks, right? And the financing for, I think, a lot of Corman's movies, much like Cocaine Bob's, are coming from folks like the Colombo crime family.
Wouldn't surprise me in the least. Not at all. And speaking of the Colombos, it just came up. There is bidding war going on for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise.
That's precisely one of the ones I'm talking about right there. As you can see, that's one of the ones that's well documented they financed, right?
Oh, yeah. Nobody made a dollar from that in terms of the actual like actors and directors until I think New Line Cinema bought the rights in the 80s because they had to fight for it. And I think it was Bryanston Pictures or whatever it's called, the distribution company run by the Pereno brothers, who also did Deep Throat, had stolen the money. And yeah, it took Tobey Hooper and all those guys well over a decade to finally collect money. And I don't even think the actors got much out of anything. Kind of like the actors from Deep Throat.
Happens a lot. Gilligan never made a dime from Gilligan's Island. Did you know that?
Yo,
that sounds about right, because that was Sherwood Schwartz, who did the Brady Bunch. The Brady kids never got a dime.
Yep.
Like in residuals.
Dude, that producer was he's one fat cat, right? None of them actors ever got any royalties.
Yo, what are those people just
imagine how many times those shows were played. Gilligan's Island and Brady Bunch my entire childhood. It was nonstop.
It's insane.
And by then, it was already like a classic. Then, kind of.
Oh, you know 20 years old by then, right? 20 years old by that point.
Yeah.
That shit. Our parents was watching that shit young.
But that's why you got to like look into some of these things. Like I remember reading this. This was so weird. I remember reading. So one of my favorite bands was like an obscure band from Memphis, Big Star, and they did the song "In the Street" that became the theme song to That 70s Show. Now get back to the Scientology aspect of things, and I'll give you another connection in a second. But the song got covered. I don't know who did it the first season, but later on it was Cheap Trick covered it. And they interviewed the lead singer of Big Star, Alex Chilton, about it, who was also the lead singer of the Box Tops at one point. And he's like, I don't know. He's like, all I know is every time that show airs, I get a check for $75. Now, thinking of how big that show was at one point in syndication, now Alex Chilton's been dead since 2010. He didn't have any health insurance and died of a heart attack.
Was it the cocaine?
Oh, he did substances. I mean,
it was the cocaine, wasn't it? That's the hell of a drug.
And stuff like that.
Yeah, you need a sample of that. You need a sample of
it. And he actually, there's a great book called I think it was called Everybody Loves You When You're Dead. And it was by this guy, Neil Strauss. And it was like these assorted tales in like music and everything like that. And one talks about Alex Chilton going up and basically bringing groceries to Dennis Wilson's house. And it was when the Mansons were there.
Oh, I'm glad you brought up the Wilsons. I was saving them for last, but Brian Wilson died this week, obviously, so I wanted to get into a little bit of that.
Yeah, a couple days ago, right?
2 days ago.
2 days, maybe yesterday. Ago. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Well,
he died in what was it? Sly Stone from Sly and the Family Stone.
Oh yeah.
Who was this? Yeah. Sylvester Stallone died?
No.
Sly Stone, the everyday people dance to the music. You know,
totally unrelated from Sylvester Stallone is what you're saying.
Totally, not a Stallone, not a Stallone.
He started out as a DJ at first, didn't that guy?
I think so. I mean, guy had a good head of hair too. They said he had just finished, doing like the screenplay of his life, and passed away from. I don't think it was cancer. I think it was another like long disease.
I don't know if I showed you this last time you were here, Phil, but whose son do you think that is on the right?
Well, that's Sage Stallone, but then again,
allegedly.
Looks
a lot like John Travolta. So with the
Scientology, John Travolta's gay.
Well, I think that's with this whole group of these cultists. I just don't think there's sexuality is a thing with them, right? Like it's more of a fluid thing, I think.
Yeah, he might just be anything that moves.
Yeah, who's sick and wanting to wear is just that's an afterthought.
Whatever can make this bust a nut works.
Yeah, well, dude. They don't care. They don't care.
I think the woman who it was a woman who got him into Scientology when he did the Boy in the Plastic Bubble. I think it was his co-star in that. And
she was in Devil's Reign with old Anton LaVey as a technical advisor, starring none other than Bill Shatner.
Bill Shatner.
Well, Billy Shatz. So speaking of all the Scientology stuff, 70s films and Roger Corman, have you seen the film?
Just too stoned. I thought it was funny.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're
back. You're back.
Have you seen the film Get Shorty?
Love that movie.
Not a long time ago.
Holy great movie, dude. I love that film.
So many great performances in that. Yeah.
So not only is this one of the films on my list of the reasons why I think Gene Hackman was a Scientologist, because you can only act opposite another Scientologist so many times before I'm going to put it on that list. You know, Will Smith, Tom Cruise, John Travolta, the list goes on. So I do love the film nonetheless, but the character he plays in there, in my opinion, is a parody of Roger Corman, right? You know, and this drug money.
Harry Zim, yeah.
Yeah, and the drug money you see that's in there, right? You see the Medellin cartel, kind of the South Americans kind of represented in there, right? You see the local, you not so much Italian, but you see a local mafia operations that are so you see the Italians because that's who Ray Barbone works for. You know, Ray Barbone.
Well, he's from Miami. Yeah, he's from Miami.
He represents the families though out in L.A. That's what he's coming out there. He tells them, I'm out here representing the families. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That was a great movie. And
I think we're seeing them
was a cop.
Oh, it's great. It's real great. Yeah. I mean, I think we're seeing a peek into the action, right? Like that's kind of, with Cocaine Bob, right? That's kind of the environment Cocaine Bob was operating in, right? When he's trying to finance the Cotton Club movies, we see the same kind of situation. I mean, I'm not saying there was a Travolta guy in the mix of that. I'm just saying like the narrative, the overall narrative we see in Get Shorty is the environment painted where the same environment that finds Roy Raiden murdered and Bob Cocaine Evans and his co-constituents, the Medellin cartel that is in prison today, the wife of the head of the Medellin cartel in America.
Yeah. Well, I think what's named, so that was Get Shorty was based off an Elmore Leonard book. And I think Elmore Leonard, Detroit guy, but I think he was tuned into the corruption in Hollywood.
Yeah,
I mean,
he was locked in, huh?
He went from writing Westerns because he did 310 to Yuma, the one that they redid with Christian Bale and Russell Crowe.
That was pretty good. For a Russell Crowe film, that was pretty good.
Yeah. But then, he had done so many, Get Shorty, and then he did the sequel, which was Be Cool. I never saw that one. But he also did.
You're not missing anything. Be Cool is, as far as sequels go, it's one of the worst.
Yeah. He also did
you seen that one, Nick?
Justified.
No.
That was the one with The Rock was in, right? I think Rock.
Yeah, The Rock.
Wait, no. What was the name of it again?
Be Cool.
Be Cool.
No, I didn't.
Dude, there's. I'll just leave it at this. There's a lot of new Wabians in that film, Nick, with a lot of Scientologists.
Oh, you should cover. We should cover. Yeah. Is it too easy?
I mean, it would be funny at least, right?
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. It might actually be entertaining.
Yeah. No.
Oh, I never saw that. I remember when that came out. I was just like, I don't know if I can do like The Rock.
It's a shitty. Like they did a bad job at even sequels. I mean, just like this is terrible. Yeah, it's not good.
Which was the backstory, I think, to Be Cool is that it's after Chili Palmer, Travolta's character decides to do a sequel to the movie that they show at the end of the movie, and it bombs, and then he gets involved in a whole record thing, and you got Vince Vaughn who plays some sort of like half-ass gangster, and I think The Rock almost plays like another version of James Gandolfini's character from the first one. And,
yeah, they were trying to do that, right? But aren't they kind of giving us a kind of a little look behind the scenes of disregard? I think I just mashed together two films. I mashed together the plot line of that film and Hollywood Homicide in my brain hole because maybe I'm wrong. Maybe one of them, it seems like it's Death Row Records, right? But I think that's
that might have been was Hollywood Homicide, the one with Harrison Ford and Josh Hartnett.
Yeah, and Dwight Yoakam. Actually, Dwight Yoakam plays a pretty good character, dirty cop.
He was in Panic Room. I remember that, and I think he was in Sling Blade.
See, am I frozen?
No, you're good.
You're good now.
Froze for like 1 second.
Yep.
And now you're frozen. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Oh man, there we go. You're back.
Yep.
Am I back?
No. Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
I in between these interruptions, I forgot where we at. Can we circle back to Elvis?
Yes. Let's go back to Elvis.
I didn't know what where else we were at there. I'm my brain hole is going in and out with my interwebs connection here apparently. So
you said Scientology. Scientology freezes it.
Oh yeah, it's the magic word. You can't say that. Xena will smite us all, Phil. Xena will smite us all.
Fucking Xena.
So, there's a fella who's involved. I know he's Boyd Rice's underling. I think Boyd Rice is Church of Satan though, so I think this is Church of Satan guys. Michael Moynihan. You know, he threatened George Bush #1 when he was the president. Secret Service did investigation. No big deal.
Oh, shit.
Boyd Rice did the same thing when he delivered a pig's head to the wife of Gerald Carter when he was president. Something about these guys like to go threaten presidents. It's weird to me. You know, the Manson girls who try to shoot Ford also. All of these things seem very strange to me. It's a odd crew that does these things. Moynihan's, I suppose he goes by a Manson scholar. I think he's involved with Nicholas Schreck and writing some of those Manson chronologies since the 80s or so.
Yeah.
So this was an interview that Moynihan did in that series, I believe, with Manson back in, like they were actually visiting Manson and doing these interviews face to face, I believe, 1995. So in 1995, they talk about Elvis. No shit. So I never knew these things existed until Miguel O'Connor, pointed these things out in my directions, and that is Occult Elvis stuff. That was great. Again, great show, folks. Check out Occult Rejects with Miguel O'Connor there. And
oh yeah, that was
about Occult Elvis. I'm telling you, dude.
I still really think that you and Julia should do like a spinoff of that, but kind of like look at it in a different way.
I don't disagree, sir. I don't. We'll have to. That sounds like a future Occult Rejects.
A non-biased look at Elvis, I think, would be really fucking interesting.
I think Julia has some good insight too. She brings a lot to the table on this subject as well.
That's right.
She's looked at this subject a long time.
She's fantastic. But yeah, I love when you guys lay on.
Dude, anytime someone brings some new Charles Manson stuff to my face here in my brain hole, which that's what happened here with Miguel O'Connor, because it hit me in the face like a brick wall, dude. I was like, what's going on right now? Did you say Elvis Presley and Charles Manson in the same sentence? I was like, what happened?
I was like, yo, that don't sound good at all.
No. Sure shit. It's a thing. I'm
thinking,
in this
why
interview,
do they even have a way to contact each other?
Well, it doesn't seem like they should be in the same circle, but check out this quote from Manson here, right? So they're doing this interview with Moynihan. It says, did you actually hang out with him? Sure, why not? I hang out with all them people. That's my neighborhood. I lived in Elvis Presley's house, man. He ran me out of the yard. I don't know why I started talking like what I presumed Charles Manson sounded like. I lived in Elvis Presley's house, man. He ran me out of the yard. I got mad at him. I was going to throw some rocks at him because I thought he was an idiot. He's an egotistical fucking punk. I never liked him even a little bit, but everybody else always kowtowed to him because he was rich and everything. But to me, that don't mean shit. I don't give a fuck how rich you are. I'll bust you up anyway. And I believe Charles Manson. That was his attitude. This is a man who grew up in prison and stuff like that. That's, he didn't give a shit about money,
Yeah.
But according to him, he lived in the Bel Air home of Elvis Presley and kicked his ass out in the yard because he's a little bitch. Whether or not that's true or not, I don't know. But
did he eventually go to the Manson murder house? Did he eventually go to that murder?
Yeah.
That was Miguel's list, right?
Yeah. How long after was it again?
Within days.
Not that long afterwards,
yeah. I was like, yo, if I would have been asked that shit, I would have been like, yo, we got to spread this out a little bit farther because this is going to look real suspect. I can't just show up a few days later and nobody's going to be like, what the fuck?
Exactly, dude. So
2 months.
You got to put your feet in those, those blue suede shoes. What was Elvis doing there? What was his concerns? What was his motivations?
That fast too.
Right.
Well, let's also just think though, back in the 1960s, I'm pretty sure the LAPD was not that keen on keeping crime scene. Like, I'm pretty sure those crime scenes were almost like a fucking picnic, like just to bring people through. There wasn't that sort of, we got to do this, we got to do that,
they were,
Phil. Just like the Idaho 4 case.
When Philip Van Adder's on the job, they were, Phil.
That when I heard your show on that, I was like, holy shit. I said, all right.
Richard Wally was also there. He was the first guy on scene at the Tate Polanski house. He's the first officer on scene at Nicole Brown Simpson.
Yo, JJ, if you're going to think about it, regardless of the bodies being moved or whatever, but like I would even say the Idaho 4 case and that case, it's almost like the same deal with the fuckery of people just walking around, people being there for a while before anything was really done.
Dude, you ain't kidding.
It's almost very close, I think, to each other.
When I was doing that analysis the other day and writing for a future show comparing the actual crime scenes of the forensic, just a pure forensic of both all these scenes, you hit it right on the head there, sir. That is exactly the same thing we see in the Manson scene, the OJ scene, the Orenthal James Simpson scene, or Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman scene, and the Idaho 4 scene. So again, we see the same people, same playbooks, and the forensics are all in. It's all the same fucking thing.
Yeah, it's almost like a script you can see being replayed, I think.
I'm almost.
And when you got
there's an outline to how they do this, I think.
Yes, sir. And when you got Cocaine Bob's buddy on the job for running the propaganda while Graydon Carter and airmail employing Howard Bloom, then you got yourself a nice cover up going on here.
I mean, just from things that I've looked at and then things I've heard you talk about. It's just like I just start to see it's like, this is the same structure. It is bullshit.
It's identical to the way the 911 calls go down, dude. Right? So if I may, just real quick on that comparison, because you do bring up a great point there, Nick. So the Orinthal James Simpson case at 10:32 p.m. from 10:42 p.m. according to the state of California. Yeah, I'm going to geek out for a moment. Kane's over at Kane B's The Purge. He's instituted a geek off meter for me. So he tries to bring me down a couple notches when I start getting real wild, right? But so the story goes the same as it does Idaho, right? So the crimes occur from 10:32 to 10:42. I would argue as early as 10:20. Per some eyewitness and earwitness accounts of the case, but this is Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. In fact, this was precisely this is the anniversary. This occurred on the night of June 12th, and the police did not respond. Officer Wally did not respond until 12:17 a.m. on the 13th. So this was June 13th, 1994. Right. That's the same officer that was the first on scene at the Tate House on August 10th, 1969. Right. So, and again, we see them responding to the scene, not for a murder, despite this is almost 2 hours after the murder occurred. And I would argue precisely almost 2 hours after the murder occurred. And they're on the Bundy residence of Nicole Brown Simpson. And they go there for a robbery in progress. Well, no, there's no noises being made anymore. There's no robbery in progress. They go there and they find Nicole Brown Simpson's neighbor holding her dog over her dead body. So, that's a mystery. It's like when they go to Idaho, right? 8 hours after so this is 2 hours later. That's 8 hours later in Idaho, right? But it's like you're saying, it's the same thing. Same fucking thing. And then by the time any cops get there, right? And after this weird, so that the Idaho calls for an unconscious person, it's may as well be as ignorant as the robbery in progress from shit that went down 2 hours earlier. So you see the same thing though. The scenes get trampled and evidence is destroyed before shit is collected. So down to the same thing with the DNA evidence under the fingernails of victim Madison Mogan in the Idaho case, and the DNA under the fingernails of Nicole Brown Simpson, and the blood that was on her that was tested, and it was not Orenthal James Simpson's blood. So we see the same thing. We see blood evidence in both cases being ignored. We see evidence of what seems to be a struggle with the victim with the DNA under fingernails being ignored in both cases. So you are correct, sir. It's fucking literally the same.
Yeah.
And they even have one more thing, if I may. They even have a DNA expert from the Orenthal J. Simpson defense team testifying for Brian Koberger, Dr. Danielle Wolf. She's a medical examiner now out of Florida, and pathologist.
What the?
Yeah, how fucking weird is that, man?
That's crazy. Well, I'm thinking in terms of
fucking weird.
A graphic crime scene where there was like total trampling of evidence would be the Jeffrey McDonald case in Carolina.
He read my mind, sir. He read my mind.
With suspect evidence, the blonde hair, that they've never been able to explain, that they tried to match to the girls' dolls and they never were able to. And they said it was synthetic. And some said it might have been Helena Stokely's hair or wig or something like that. And that whole, the fact that they weren't even willing to consider it, and the fact that McDonald, who's got to be in his 80s now, still won't, even for parole, he still will not admit guilt. He still maintains his innocence. And I went from believing he was dead to rights guilty to I think he got framed. And
let me add a little sprinkles on the Sunday you just made there, Bill. So we were talking about Gunderson earlier, and I find it very questionable. The first thing Gunderson does is take on this case. Pardon me. He then gets the process church of the final judgment's attorney, John Markham, involved. And John Markham and Alan Dershowitz go on to go ahead and extinguish the appeals of Jeffrey McDonald. And I would say in a fashion that was ensuring that they weren't going to win and he would have nothing to fight for later.
Shit. Yeah, it's tough to tell where Gunderson truly lays in a lot of these things. Was he someone who was trying to get answers, or was he someone who was like a double agent of things? I mean, he was a guy who was like, I think, ran the LA office of the FBI. I mean, he was like someone high up in the FBI, and then, becomes a guy who talks about satanic ritual abuse and gets, I think, even consulted in terms of Oklahoma City. I know because I've spoken to, who is it? Sergeant Terry Yeeke's wife, who's on Twitter a lot, Tanya. And she still stands by Gunderson's work. I mean, there's people who are good with his work and others who believe that he was, like almost like a spook, just intelligence asset in one form or another.
Sure. Well, if I may add to that point, would you believe, I'm sure you since you followed Dana Dudall and Rodney Jewell's Twixter account over there, specifically in her work, she recently uncovered a document from June 15th, 1967 at the Straight Theater in the Haight-Ashbury. Yep. That puts the Grateful Dead, that is their manager's son at the manager at the time and president of their music publishing company, was a fellow by the name of Alan Trist, the son of Eric Trist, the founder of Tavistock. So we got Tavistock, the Grateful Dead, Michael Riconosciuto is a stagehand in this performance, and Charles Manson is a technical person in this performance on the backstage. So we have we got Michael Riconosciuto, Charles Manson, and the Grateful Dead in the same place in the Straight Theater on June 15th, 1967. And the reason why that's important to Gunderson is because Riconosciuto was the COINTELPRO operative reporting to Gunderson on the activities of the process and Manson in the Haight-Ashbury at this time. Yeah,
that's after a while, it's like, okay, when is it no longer a coincidence? And
so for sure, but when is it like, because Gunderson's like, oh, this satanic stuff, I've never heard of it. Let me learn about these things. Really, Ted? It sounds like you're going back to the late 60s, deep into studying the satanic cult activity, right?
Yeah, he might have been blowing smoke. And it's
how does he hire the process church's attorney for Jeffrey McDonald? How does that go down?
Yeah, no idea.
Is he fooled? Because if he's fooled, he's not a very good detective, Phil. I'm not trying to diminish your or anyone else's opinion of Gunderson. I'm just saying, as a former private detective myself, I'm like, it's not a very good detective if he didn't, he didn't look into that.
Yeah, I subscribe to the
from day one. McDonald was saying hippie cult, right?
Yeah, and then they said he saw a Esquire magazine article that was on his coffee table that was talking about the Manson murders, and so he wrote pig or something on the wall, even though the wound he had could have killed him. But they're like, no. He put it to a certain way. It collapsed his lung. He knew because he was a doctor. And it was like, that was one of those sort of like, shitty theories they ascribed to him. Just like later on, Fatal Vision author Joe McGinnis, who was on his defense team, said, he was taking diet pills to maintain his hours. So like using them as meth, which later on, McGinnis said, oh yeah, I made that up.
Correct me if I'm wrong, sir. He knew this man too, right?
Aquino?
It's the eyebrows, caterpillars.
They were all I'm saying is Jeffrey McDonald was a Special Forces Green Beret doctor assigned to Fort Bragg at the very same time that Aquino was down there at the Fort Bragg JFK Special Forces Warfare Center.
Eyebrows.
Eyebrows.
I try to get them better, dude. That's the best. That's the best. Like, dude, I worked on the eyebrows for a minute too. I was trying to get them real.
Oh, I
size.
can imagine how that would be to even try to get AI to do.
Yeah, it wasn't easy.
You're like, fuck this. This is gonna.
Well, that's the best I could get it. I mean, they're kind of crooked. They're not. I didn't achieve the Aquino crooked nature of his eyebrows, but
Dude, you
it's representative.
Somewhere with the eyebrows.
Oh, that's funny, dude. I can just paste them over these. That's even better. I like that idea.
Yeah, he's got some crazy eyebrows. Like they're
dude, they're wild.
Like caterpillars.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing. If you look back at his like high school yearbook, dude, he had them wild eyebrows back then. Dude.
I'm not like, for guys who want to get their shit done, but yo, you should have went and got your
I mean, I think he leaned into it a little bit, but they weren't straight back then. They were a little bit. They were definitely that. They had that. It's like a callus, dude. He has like a callus in his eyebrow or something. You know what I mean? Like a twirl thing there.
Callus.
His eyebrows. His eyebrows look like they could have been like. I mean, they could have compared to like Fred Goldman's mustache. Remember, you ever see Fred Goldman's mustache?
Fred Goldman's got a legendary mustache, dude. That's up there with mustache. That's legendary, dude.
He anytime I saw him,
what's the deal with Fred Goldman? What's he into?
Oh, Goldman, I don't know. All I just remember was, I mean, because again, I believe I really believed OJ was innocent, and then I believed that he was guilty. Then I believed he had help, and now after listening to one of your last shows with that, I'm like, yeah, I never thought he acted alone if he did it, but I'm like, now I'm kind of convinced there's he didn't do it. But I don't know where Fred comes in on it.
If I may add a detail to my last OJ Simpson, the Orinthal J. Simpson, the great OJ debate, which was actually Julia Cosmic Peach suggested that. I'm glad she did because that was a great show. I enjoyed it. I did forget, in my attempt to maintain a narrative in my brain hole and have a conversation and pull up things. I did forget one salient characteristic there. So the blood evidence in the case that was OJ's that was found in weird spots and very precise, very symmetrical drips was tested and tested positive for EDTA, which is the substance. Yeah, so the defense had a guy that testified. They even had the FBI agent come and testify because the FBI, they strangely enough, in a rare instance that it just really boggles my brain hole, the FBI did something ethical and correct. So, and when the prosecution tried to get them to testify saying that there was no EDTA, they came in and testified there was, right?
I remember the one guy who I remember, because later on he would come up talking about issues with the FBI crime lab, was Frederick Whitehurst. I remember that he testified in the OJ case, but I don't remember if it was about EDTA or not.
Well, I think they had a different guy from the FBI that the prosecution had. Again, we're talking about different offices, I think, within the FBI. So, like, the prosecution witness just didn't show up. They're like, nah, we're just not going to come into that because obviously there's EDTA in that. You bastards did that,
I mean, between what was it, Van Adder walking around with the vial of blood, you had
not just Orenthal J. Simpson, he had the victims' vials too. It later came to find out,
and then you had basically what was it, like the two? You had Dennis Fung, who was like the guy who later on I think shook the defense team's hand after he testified, and after they just like totally torched him on the stand, and I think his assistant was like, it was her first week, she was like a rookie. I mean, it was, you couldn't have written that. You couldn't have written the script any better.
What you're describing, well, I think they did. Well, I think that is a script, sir. I think what you're describing is the machinations of something that was intended to fail from the beginning. So why is Furman there in the first place? He basically gets assigned to the robbery homicide. I think it's 4 months prior. It's not long prior.
Yeah.
He's doing traffic most of his career.
He was a guy who tried to get a psych discharge within his first 2 years and tried to get a disability for it. Yeah,
and he's the guy that everyone knew, including the prosecutor's office, was having an affair with Nicole Brown Simpson, according to an internal affairs investigation report. And numerous members of both the LAPD and the prosecutor's office were aware of comments and statements or witnessed things that exhibited that he was indeed having an affair with Nicole Brown Simpson.
That wouldn't surprise me in the least. Not at all.
It was ignored because no one wanted to. Still, that's what I'm saying. The whole thing was blown up from the beginning, and he blew up both the case for both the prosecution and the defense, because by the time he hits the stand for the prosecution in March, the defense has already laid out a lot of this questionable evidence as we're already discussing here, right?
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing was they were trying to build. Talk about scripted. The confrontation between him and I think at one point they wanted F. Lee Bailey to go against him. And you mean
F. Lee Bailey? Is that the guy that was running that Iran-Contra bank out of Miami back in *93, the year prior to the Orinthal J. Simpson case? That F. Lee Bailey?
Yeah, but probably before he got disbarred, because I know that happened.
It's wild. All these connections are the same damn shit, right? I mean, again, it's the fact that Bill Colby's son is a chief witness for the prosecution against Orenthal J. Simpson tells me this, that so OJ gets him and Nicole separate. I think it's 91. She moves into a different residence. I think it's on Green Street there in Brentwood or somewhere around there, and she is living with the manager of that restaurant group that is owned by the mafia and is the front for all this cocaine trafficking. The same restaurant group where Ron Goldman and two of his buddies were all murked. Not just Goldman. He had numerous buddies in that same restaurant group murked. And Nicole's living with the manager of that restaurant group. So they have locations in Brentwood, Malibu, Beverly Hills, and Aspen, Colorado, which is interesting for a different tale for a different day. But that incident in October of '93 where he's over there screaming about cocaine and hookers in the background of what he thought was a call to her mother and what turned out to be a 911 call. He's going nuts, right? And she doesn't press charges because, he made some good points. You know what I mean? So he makes her move out of that home. And again, I'm not white knighting for Orenthal J. Simpson here. I'm just laying out, some of the stuff that was hidden in these matters. He makes her move out of that home and move into the Bundy address. He makes homeboy move out. He makes Cato Kalin, who was also living there, move into his guest house. So he says, no more of this shit around my kids, which is what he's yelling in the background. Quit having coke and hookers around my children, right? And because she was running around with Heidi Fleiss over there in that house, right? And again, this dude, her roommate was dating one of Heidi Fleiss's recruiters, right? So there's the intermingling of all the cocaine and the Fleiss hookers going on. Next door to all this activity is Carl Colby. What's he doing living next door to this? That's why he testifies later. He's used by the prosecution by saying that from 91 to 93, that including that October of 93 incident, that Orenthal J. Simpson was a madman who definitely killed his wife because he abused her. That was what his testimony was. But why is he living next door to this mafia run? All these, all the shit we've already talked about, living next door to that, right?
Meanwhile, Denise is dating Fiata, who's a made guy in the LA mob.
There you go, sir. There you go. A known hitman, right? A known hitman who's later dragged in by the defense in the case.
It's crazy. I mean, a lot of crazy interlocking connections. I mean, and then what is it? I mean, I always found it interesting that both Cato and Paula Barbieri both wind up doing basically softcore porn movies after the fact.
Here's the deal. You make a deal with the devil, sir, you got to pay off that debt. And that devil is Bob Cocaine Evans.
Well, yeah, the man had to do something when his career kind of went to shit.
Cato's lucky he didn't have to get the old Bob Poop slide campaign going on there. Legend has it Bob built an intricate 2-story slide system in his bedroom where he could stand at the top and shit in the hooker's mouth at the bottom of the slide.
Yeah.
So, Cato's lucky he didn't get that treatment. You know what I mean?
True. Very true.
You may have. I'm not sure. I'm just saying. Cocaine Bob's deep in this mix. Him and OJ were tight. They played a week. They had weekly tennis matches and shit like that. They were at least in some regard friends.
Well, I mean, if anything else, cocaine and Hollywood go together from the beginning. I mean, I thought you were going to say cocaine and Bob Evans go together like peanut butter and jam. Well, he tried playing down, like in the 2 books I read, he kind of plays down his cocaine usage, that it was all for his back or whatever it was. And, this and that. And I said, it's part of it's like, I think you're just trying to make it
somehow it was working like an opiate.
Yeah. Like that. Right. He wasn't possibly like one of the people that
back you out of me.
Yeah. Like he wasn't one of the people that George Young was referring to in the movie Blow, like when all the cocaine.
Funny you say that. It's funny you say that because I think one of the fellas in the movie Blow, the guy that essentially is part of the team that turncoats against George Young there, Who Nick knows George Young. He's met him before, right?
Yeah, I met him in prison at Fort Dix.
Really?
Yeah. I was there when I got there right before he left. I was there for maybe a year and a half before he left.
I think that's when he broke probation and got put back in there is when you saw him, I think.
I think you're right, because after that, I think he basically kind of disappeared.
Well, here's why he broke probation.
Years. I know that. Yeah.
Did they get him again? I don't know, but yeah, he might have been there, like you're saying, JJ.
Well, no, I know. I looked at when this happened. So he broke probation by going back out to California. When he got out the first time, he went out to California and had a birthday party with his old hair salon drug dealing buddy. So Pee Wee Herman's character in the film is based upon these two brothers, and they're still alive and well in San Diego today. And they threw George Young a birthday party, and he went back to prison for that, like he did in the film before, right? For breaking probation, he did it again.
Yep.
So that's when he ended up in Fort Dix. Isn't it weird that
he had a room to himself and everything? That guy?
Did he really? He was living high class then, huh? I guess if you're running the Medellin Coke for the Iran-Contra stuff for many years, they're gonna show you some gratitude, I suppose, right?
Yeah, he was like in a building where all the new people come in, and then they get like they get determined where they're gonna go in what building and everything. It's almost like a receiving client. And like to even get a job in that building for some reason, and to get because if you're a porter, you'll get your own room too, or you might just share it with one other guy. That's like a big, holy fuck, how did you pull that off? If that sounds crazy, but this is, how it goes in prison. And he was just rocking a room to himself in there to begin with. So, I mean, he had like a sweet setup that people in prison wish they could have got. Yeah, he was building.
I feel like that's what the mob gets, right? Is that kind of like what you see in the mob movies? Like they get that special, that same kind of special.
Oh, like Goodfellas?
Yeah, Goodfellas.
Well, so here's the thing. They used to, or the story goes that they put a stop to that. But like in Goodfellas, what Henry Hill had with Paulie and Johnny Dio and those guys was, they would kick money to the guards who were getting paid, dog shit.
Yeah,
and
I don't know if I'm buying that, Phil. No offense, sir, because they put that one crime boss in Camp Butner, North Carolina. They put him in with Bernie Madoff. They were cellmates together. They were cellies.
Wasn't it? Who was it? Was it Persico? Maybe towards the end?
It was Persico. It was the Colombo crime family boss. Holy shit, you're right, sir. So I imagine those two fellas were living high on the hog, right?
Well, Persico got transferred. So he winds up getting convicted in the commission case. He's in Lompoc, and there's a huge article written, I think it was the Daily News, breaking about how the fact it was Persico, one of the guys from the Westies, and I think it was a couple of guys from Roy DeMeo's crew and the Gambinos. We're all kind of hanging out. They're playing in a rock band. Persico's gets his own garden, basically like a club fed, even though Lompoc, I think, was I think it was medium correctional. It wasn't maximum. It wasn't like your San Quentin or some of the more.
It's medium. It's right outside Vandenberg Air Force Base. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
So that led to eventually they're like, we got to transfer. Like, this doesn't look good. But I mean, they had issues where I think like New York gangsters, there was one guy who I think smuggled his boys out, his sperm out to impregnate his girlfriend. And they were like, okay. And then because he was bribing a guard, and they were like, yep, we got to put a stop to that. Not saying it doesn't still happen, but I think it's a little less obvious, like when a place would become club fed. They
took it down a couple notches, huh? Phil, you are indeed a man with a lot of details, because I forgot which mob boss that was, and you, as always, were correct, sir. When it comes to your mob knowledge, it's extensive. It's Madoff's closest prison chum, Colombo crime boss, family crime boss, Carmine Persico, aka the Snake. Is that the Snake? Yeah,
he's the one who lived the longest out of anyone who got the 100-year sentence. A lot of those other guys were dead within a handful of years.
It's a match made in hell, right? Madoff and that guy.
Madoff, who never said a bad word about the Mets owners, the Wilpons, even though he screwed us for over a decade.
That's a story I'm gonna have to hear sometime here in the future. That sounds interesting.
Say, Nick? Phil, did you know Vincent Badalamenti? You know who he is? Have you ever heard of him?
Wasn't he? It sounds like a guy who was in the Bananas, maybe. I mean, that name sounds familiar to me.
Yeah, I was locked up with that dude too.
Oh wow!
How do you spell this?
That motherfucker in Brooklyn.
I wonder if he was related to the Sicilian boss. There was a guy Gaetano Badalamenti.
Can y'all help a dumb Appalachian man out when it comes to spelling these names? Can we spell that for me?
Yeah, I'll send you. I just found them on Wikipedia. Here we go. I'll send it to you.
So this is a Bonanno guy because they're Bonannos. That's as far as these families go. Colombos and Bonannos are my favorites as far as interests and things that their activities go.
Yeah, you want
Bonannos.
Go ahead, sir.
Oh, sorry, Donnie Brasco. I was thinking about. I mean, because they got kicked off the commission. They got kicked off the commission for that. Almost making an FBI agent.
And that ties in. I don't want to go. Well, I will go since we were already talking about Elvis. That ties into Operation Fountain Pen, the undercover operation Elvis was involved in with the FBI there.
Okay.
So he dies in Operation Fountain Pen. Mobsters get busted the next day. But that investigation, which was being conducted out of Memphis for multiple years with numerous FBI agents on Elvis's roadie group, right, traveling with him and whatnot, his crew, right, his entourage, if you will, right. Because he always had a big entourage. So the day after he dies, there in August, was it August 77? Is that right?
August 16th, 1977. Yep. Yeah.
The next day, the syndicate, I believe, as they were calling themselves, they get busted by the FBI. So this operation, they called it Operation Fountain Pen, then continues on and evolves into the largest multi-jurisdiction, longest-running investigation in FBI history out of the FBI's Indianapolis field office. And one of the things it spawns is Operation Abscam, right? And another thing it spawns is the Donnie Brasco operations. That's why you see the boat being used in Abscam in Brasco, because they're part of the same overarching. Yep, there you go, sir. Yep. That's kind of a major kind of moment in that story, right? Where they're like, "Oh shit, Donnie Brasco, you're about to get fucked up," if they find out they're using this Operation Abscam boat, right?
Yep.
With Santos Travacante, nonetheless, right? That's who they're meeting with, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So these operations are all a derivative of Operation Fountain Pen. That's why they're using the same assets in those two in that operation, right? So I just think that's interesting. That started with Elvis. I think it's still going today, and that's a story for a different day. But I went over that a little bit the other day with Troublemaker Jonah on my show there in the Operation Pat Gun and Idaho Nazis. So
how did that go?
Okay.
Oh, dude, that was a fantastic conversation, dude. I got so much more shit to read about from that.
Because I know he's another one with like a photographic memory.
I'm actually afraid to invite Phil and Jonah in the same conversation because my whole brain hole might blow up, dude.
You probably just sit back and just like chill out and say nothing.
I know, but the amount of new information I got tabs on, dude.
You'd have to just write shit down the whole time.
Dude, here's one from the other night that I thought was kind of odd. You fellas might enjoy. Y'all familiar with the actress Melissa Joan Hart, Sabrina the Teenage Witch?
Yo, my math teacher was her swimming coach.
Yeah, she's from Long Island.
Okay. She's from. Yeah. Oh no shit. Okay, yeah. I did not know that. All right. Well, apparently she was out there. What is it?
Mr. Crowley, my math teacher.
Come on. Oh, that's right. That's what you said you first heard about Aleister Crowley from that guy, right? And Ozzy Osbourne songs.
Yeah.
So apparently remember that Nashville transpocalypse shooter at the Christian school? 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago.
Yep. The one that were sitting on the manifesto, I think.
There you go, sir. Aubrey, maybe something.
Yeah, I think Aubrey. I forget what the last name was, but yeah.
Would you believe Melissa Joan Hart was on scene saving the children from that school?
Oh no!
Did I freeze? Am I back?
No,
you're good. You're good.
I think we froze.
Okay, I'm glad that broke your gents' brain holes as much as
I think we really both just
what
froze.
What the fuck are you talking about, Dan?
I was like, no.
So I had so many tabs open from that conversation. I think it was a great conversation. Folks should check it out. But I joked at the end. I was like, I got 7 tabs open that are un-Melissa Joan Hart related, and I got 7 Melissa Joan Hart related tabs open. So that was that shocking of a revelation to me. Like, why is she like of all people, dude? Of all people, and I wanted to bring up that story. I'm glad you asked that because you didn't intend to ask that, but it teed me up for my point here. That why is Jodie Sweetin from Full House at the forefront of these LA riots? What's your thoughts on that, fellas?
I'm actually wondering if maybe these.
Would you like to see a video? I'll bring up a video if you'd like.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah, I saw it too. Yeah. Hold up.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll bring the video while you share.
I just wonder if it's like, when people are like, when you hear Lady Gaga bitch about like this interview that was years ago, everybody thought like, oh, she's so cool, she doesn't want to have to sell perfume, which she's doing now anyway. Bitching about saying that like the industry makes you do things you don't want to have to do. I actually have wondered, is being like B people or extras in psyops actually part of their job as well sometimes, which is kind of what you're saying now. These people are showing up
being actual crisis
it's a paying gig, right?
Yeah, and you're being a scumbag doing that shit.
Yeah,
it's a paying gig, right?
Yeah, it's just part of their contract. Oh, I'm sorry,
I'm not saying it's SAG sanctioned. What I'm saying is it's a paying gig. Yeah.
Well, maybe like James Woods.
That's exactly what I joke about when I say these folks look like from Central Casting, right? There you go, sir. That's a great example. He could have saved us all, Phil. If it wasn't for James, James Woods tried. He could have saved us all. Isn't that what he kind of claims, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Mark Wahlberg too, right? He's like, if I was there, I would have fought all those guys.
Mark Wahlberg, Seth MacFarlane, who managed to miss his flight. Maybe could have told him jokes. Who knows? You think of all those guys who just managed to miss that flight. Could have done his Peter Griffin impersonation. Would have made the terrorists laugh.
So what we're saying now, this sells the concepts of the whole narrative, right? These guys are these stars and whatnot. They're like, obviously, their stories are preposterous, but it helps sell the general narrative, right? Like, I feel like it's part of the show, if you will.
Going to see Zelensky.
Yeah.
Dude, like Ben Stiller, right? Like, what's that about?
Yeah, it's all just like, you're the one we got for this. Get on
Sean Penn
right?
getting the El Chapo,
Right.
El Chapo
available.
and then going to see Zelensky later.
Like, now Josh Brolin's down in Mexico filming the whatever movie, whatever he's into. These, what I mean? They probably have a whole list. Like, now he's on assignment over here. He's on set here. We could squeeze in Matthew McConaughey, but just for the weekend.
Yeah, we could get him into this shooter that we got going on.
Yeah, Charles Harrelson, the assassin's son, Matthew McConaughey. We can get him in, but he's only got 48 hours available, so it's got to be in and out.
Yo, I couldn't believe that shit. I'm like, this dude walks around with people who have guns on them, and he's like fucking talking about guns and shit.
Right?
Like, what the fuck, dude? Shut up.
Clearly not a Texan. It
really bothered me. I kind of like, I hate to like start like to be one of those people that's like, now I don't like some of this stuff because of that move. But that really did irk me when I saw him do that. I was like, dude, just shut up, sit the fuck down. Please don't do this to yourself. Don't become one of these assholes.
Well, maybe that's maybe that's like another way, like they talk about the whole thing with certain actors, the whole the buck broken thing. Maybe that's another way of it, like it's you think of someone like I've mentioned in Seth MacFarlane supposedly being hung over and his agent told him the wrong time, so he misses the flight out of Boston that winds up crashing, allegedly. And then what does he go on to do? Besides, when Family Guy gets eventually brought back on again, he becomes one of the biggest donors to the Democratic Party. Like he hosts galas for Obama. He's been sucking off the Democrats now for a good while. Family Guy I couldn't even watch anymore because it just became Trump jokes left and right. I'm like, I'm not a Trump fan, but I'm like, after a while, I don't need too much politics in my shows. And I think he embraced it whole heart, like whole hog. I don't know so much about Wahlberg. All I know is Wahlberg has a lot of money, and I know that Wahlberg produced Entourage, which has Ari Gold, who's supposed to be Ari Emanuel. So, I'm sure at some point, Mark Wahlberg, sold out in some form. And,
well, that's kind of a satire on Wahlberg's life, right? Entourage, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like those are real, the people, the characters in there, they're all of Vincent Chase's friends and whatnot. Those are all based on Wahlberg's crew.
Yep. Because I think the real turtle died years ago. I know that. I think I watched like one episode of the show, but
he was super fat.
The only thing, there's only so much Jeremy Piven, screaming like a jackass I can listen to an entire, go around.
I don't fault you there, sir. I'm trying to look up that pilot's name from Blow, the film Blow. So just before I forget that, the film Blow, there's a pilot that comes in throughout the film. When they're doing all the dealings, him and Diego, who's Carlos Later, the Medellin guy, right? So they bring in that white dude, that pilot from Florida. That, in my opinion, is Larry Greenberger, the husband of Karen Greenberger, Cocaine Bob's associate in the co-conspirator in the murder of Roy Radin, and the wife. Larry Greenberger was Medellin guy's #1 guy in America. So we see in this story below, George Young gets busted shortly thereafter, right? And it's this guy, Larry Greenberger, who takes over as that #1 dude in the Medellin cartel that George Young was doing. So we see these stories in different narratives where you just don't see them pushed together, mashed together like that. But that, my opinion, we do see Larry Greenberger in the film below.
Okay. So he's the base for, what was the guy's name? Jack Stevens, I think was the name of the pilot.
Holy smokes, sir. I swear, Phil, you are a man with many details. I was Googling it. I'm like, what's the pilot's name? And it kept telling me George Young. I'm like, George Young's not a pilot. Why is AI stupid? Why is Google stupid? Yeah, Jack Stevens. There we go. So Jack Stevens, my opinion, that is Larry Greenberger. Yes, sir.
It's crazy. I mean, when it comes to, when you think of the interlocking connections with the drug world, but you think of whenever they started really going in the importing into the country with the Contras. I said, they had different operations. I mean, I think they had them going from Medellin through Miami. I think the cocaine cowboy types. I think they had it going through. First it was Louisiana with Barry Seal, and then later it was through Mina when Louisiana kind of basically threatened to kick Seal out or arrest him. And then I think they probably even had a pipeline through Texas. Like they had whatever available port that they could get through. But then, handful of years before, a lot of the stuff with the Contra stuff, you had. There was, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of, there's a guy named Bill Tyree, who I believe is still alive. He's currently rotting in a prison in Massachusetts for the murder of his wife. And he was special forces out of Fort Devens. And
how do you spell that?
Devens or Tyree?
Is it Tyree?
Yep. Yeah. His wife, Elaine. And so Bill Tyree had allegedly taken part in some operations. Yeah, it was Watchtower was the name of the covert op. And because a few of the people who were, I think, his superior officers who tried to blow the whistle on it died suspicious deaths. And Tyree, I think, has tried to appeal. I think he's, we're talking 1979, we're talking like 45 years, almost 46 years, I think. And,
so is this relative to Iran-Contra, the Fort Bragg operations, or the 20th Special Forces? What are we talking here?
Well, this actually involves, this was before Iran-Contra, but this involves Noriega. I also believe in...
so elements that we would later know to be Iran-Contra, if I may correct my statement.
Yep, and also an Israeli named Michael Harari, who would pop up in
some elements of this case seem to be chilling echoes of the Jeffrey McDonald case, huh?
Yep, I reviewed this book.
What's that about?
Too.
So you reviewed this book? Oh, excellent. Okay, so you know this book then? Okay, nice.
Yep,
nice.
Yeah, because I first come across Tyree's name, I believe, there's a book called Defrauding America, which is about this guy who was I think he was an FAA safety inspector who saw corruption in the airline industry. And then eventually the government went after him. And then later on, he got introduced to a lot of other people and, covert ops guys who kind of got, were the victims of limited hangouts. And he kind of talked about that's first time how I ever heard about the Franklin scandal was based off Defrauding America. But he also mentions Bill Tyree, and Tyree's case, is interesting. And, there was Watchtower. And then when Tyree's trial was going on, there turned out to have been a surveillance operation called Operation Orwell, which involved
how fitting.
Yep. Listening.
Right.
Listening
how on the nose is that, Phil?
Listening devices being planted in prosecutors' offices. I think,
come on. Did they call it Project Big Brother also? Was that like a sub-project of it?
Yeah.
I mean, let's face it, CIA
cameras.
Every now and then they could be on the nose, But They supposedly, I think, bugged Ted Kennedy's office. I think they said even religious officials, like whatever it was, to keep this operation secret. And I actually, so years ago, this is like 2003. I could pretty much pinpoint the year. They used to have the A&E show, Investigative Reports. It was what's his name? Bill Curtis. Bill Curtis, that great
Curtis.
voice.
Yeah, that was a good show, man. I enjoyed some of that A&E program back then. Criminal Confidential, that was a good one.
That and American Justice. American Justice is one of my other favorites that he did.
Maybe it was City Confidential. They did weird
City
crimes and
Confidential.
murders. City Confidential. There you go.
City Confidential. That was where I saw they did Biloxi with the murder of Vince Sherry and his wife Margaret. It was a judge and his wife, and that wound up connecting to the Dixie Mafia and got the mayor of Biloxi indicted. But with the Tyree case, they had an episode called "Murder at Fort Devens." It aired, in terms of me seeing it, once. Never saw it again. And because at one point,
I've never heard of this, Phil. This is the first I'm hearing of these things, so I'm glad you're airing it.
Well, it's interesting enough. So when they reference some of the stuff that Tyree was talking about, in terms of why his wife was murdered to, keep Watchtower shut up, they show like a document, and I see two names, Edwin Wilson and Frank Turple, and I'm like, oh shit, because I already come across those names. Ed Wilson was like, they called him the death merchant. He was the guy who was convicted of selling arms to Libya with Gaddafi, even though Wilson said I was CIA. And they're like, no, he's no longer CIA. He was running this group. It was called Task Force 157, which was out of the Navy. And I think he ran afoul of.
May I put a pause there for a moment? Task Force 157 out of the Navy.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned where Wilson was from, Idaho.
Oh, this is the dude I was going to ask you about. Thank you, sir. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what I was saying. This is that's what I was getting at with the proto machinations of Iran-Contra, and this is the guy that connects it, right?
Yep. Yeah. So Wilson, he was a guy. So he winds up getting sentenced to, I think it was life, because between the selling weapons and they said at one point he put a hit out on the prosecutor and also his own wife. And
that's never a good idea. I don't care how bad.
Yeah.
I don't like that prosecutor.
And the prosecutor who'd be involved in his case, what was it? Lawrence Barcella wound up being involved in the October surprise investigation. So that guy's kind of suspect as hell. And
so you mean to tell me this guy was both CIA? It's people like this guy that I find very fascinating because he's both CIA, but he's an O&I guy assigned to CIA, and I don't think those two organizations like each other very much, Phil.
Yep, and I think he was sacrificed. He was sacrificed because he'd be involved in a company that was called EATSCO, which is like Egypt Arms Transportation, with the guy named Richard Secord, who would pop up in Iran-Contra because he was Air Force general, and a guy named Albert Hakim, a guy named Thomas Kleins, who was CIA. Kleins would wind up being sentenced in Iran-Contra, I think might have been perjury, and Ted Shackley.
Old Ted Shackley, that's a dark character right there.
Yeah, Ed Wilson was connected with a lot of guys. A guy named Rafael Chichi Quintero, who I believe might have been Operation 40. Quintero,
there you go. I like that.
Quintero came up in the book I finished, T.J. English's last book. I believe it was The Corporation, about these guys who were cocaine cowboys out of Miami, but they were former Cuban exiles.
But before I go back here, so this was the Fort Devers case there.
Fort Devens, yeah.
I'm sorry, Fort Devens case there. Yeah. So it says this case provoked suspicions of judicial misconduct, government cover-up, clandestine black ops by the military, and various conspiracy theories ultimately implicating deep state involvement. I mean, I can see the correlations to McDonald, and again, it is this network of we're talking about, right? This Operation 40, the Material Assistance Command, Bill Colby, basically umbrella of network, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they're connected. I mean, especially when you have Noriega's in there and Michael Harari, who, as an Israeli intelligence asset, pops up in a lot of things. Kind of like this one, who was it? Rafi Itan. You start seeing these guys pop up over and over and over and over again. And,
right.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they're connected, or like as one, kind of like when we talk about. I've mentioned Nugan Hand. Before Nugan Hand, there was Castle Bank. Like one thing winds up getting shut down, pops up with something else, and then later on after Nugan Hand, there was a bank called Bishop Baldwin Rewald Dillingham and Wong, which was out of Hawaii, that had a guy, Ron Rewald, who said he was CIA, and that bank collapses, and he winds up taking the fall for this bank, and then just one thing leads to another.
And it's always the CIA at the top of these boards, and typically it seems like, at least with BCCI, the Vatican Bank involved as well.
Yeah, I mean, they said, what was it? I think that it was just coming across. I got Posner's book, which I started reading. I said, which I don't know, considering the fact that it's Posner and he's another one of those mainstream, narrative guys from JFK to Martin Luther King. I mean, the Vatican Bank is like, I don't give into conspiracies. It's like, all right.
Right. Very convenient there, Posner. Very convenient. Yep. So when it comes to all these characters, Phil, why is it always coming back to as Tricky Dick put it, in the Watergate tapes, that whole Bay of Pigs thing?
I think, they
were. Look right here with Ed Wilson, right? He's even colluding with Cuban exiles, part of that same, as you were describing, the Operation 40 Force. These folks, the Barry Seals, the Mitch Warbells, the Gary Hemmings, the folks that are training these Cuban forces to go assassinate Castro, that, seemingly they pop up everywhere around these operations relative to Iran-Contra and their, constituents within the CIA.
I think it's an offshoot of like what you'd call like the Old Boys Network. Now, when Danny Casolaro was trying to trace the origins of the octopus, he puts it all the way back to a failed CIA operation, and I think it was, I want to say Albania. It had something to do with one that Kim Philby gave up, the infamous MI6 spy for the Russians, and that out of that came what would be the octopus, and that in his book he names them. And I know Ed Wilson is someone he actually had reached out to in some form. I know he wanted to interview Howard Hunt. I know that was part of his plans before he died. But I know Ed Wilson was someone he reached out to. And it's interesting enough, Wilson dies in 2012. He did spend the last 8 years of his life, he did get out of jail, and he got sprung based off a lawyer who used to be CIA. They were able to they proved the fact that the CIA lied, that Wilson was working for them when he was selling arms to Gaddafi. I think, like I said, I think he was just sacrificed because he was too high profile. He was spending, I think he had like multiple houses. He was just living too high on the hog for people like, Secord and Shackley, who would have preferred he kept a low profile. You make some reasonable points there. I like where your head's at for sure. What are your thoughts on, speaking of these matters with Casolaro and gang, what are your thoughts on why is Michael Riconosciuto still alive today? Or is he? I think he's still alive because, actually I was just reading today, and it was on Facebook originally, that Netflix.
Wait, Michael Riconosciuto has a Facebook? That'd be a real boomer thing to do.
No, someone who knows certain elements of the story, who looked into it, this whose father was actually killed in the Indio case, the Cabazon, the Cabazon Indians, the murder.
You about an old girl whose dad was murdered by was it one of the Nichols fellas? I always get the Nichols boys mixed up there.
Possibly on the orders of John Nichols and by a guy named Jimmy Hughes. Jimmy Hughes was the guy who was indicted for it, and then was supposedly converted, became like a minister, like in I think South America.
Contract hitman for the CIA, though, correct?
Yeah, I believe so. I think even self-admitted, said that he was an assassin, and I think might have been connected with the Gambinos, possibly like Robert Booth Nichols was.
That's what I was going to say. These Nickel boys seem to be connected to the mob families, right?
Yep, and Nichols was also connected
allegedly no relation to the
Yakuza, but with this Facebook post, Rachel Begley, whose father was, I think Ralph Boger was the guy's name, she was responding to allegations Riconosciuto made to Covert Action magazine, which had published like a further takedown of the American conspiracy, the Octopus Murders documentary, which got nominated.
It's actually a great article. I've seen it.
Yeah, it was good, but she was counteracting was attacks on Sherry Seymour, who wrote The Last Circle about the octopus.
Sure. I recall those aspects of the series, yes.
And that Riconosciuto was accusing Sherry Seymour of lying, and that Gunderson was representing Riconosciuto and where she came in and all this. And there's been attacks on her because speaking of Oklahoma City, I don't know if you've seen on Twitter a little lately, is in the last few days, one of the researchers in Oklahoma City, who I used to really admire his opinion, has been going after Dr. Wendy Painting and anyone who supports her. And there's been a war of words. And
is this the guy that got arrested for murder or convicted of murder?
No, who? The one on Twitter?
Yeah, I think his name was Julian Klebold.
No. This is another Booth. He goes like OKC facts, and I guess Wendy Painting might have accused him of something, and now
there was some dude who's big.
I've seen that other guy.
Yeah, okay.
I've seen. Yeah,
I want to make sure I wasn't thinking of the same guy. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Booth has been going like off on a tear, and apparently,
what's their beef now? What's it over?
I think him and Wendy Painting used to be like close, like they used to kind of bounce ideas off each other, give each other research, and then I guess something happened where she said he was like, I guess, being overly friendly, and then it felt like after a while it kind of like got quashed, and then recently it started up again. They got Terry Yiki's widow involved, and like just misrepresentation, this and that, and then today he was going like scorched earth because people were telling him, "Hey, you're making this personal," and I guess that included Jesse Trenadu, the one whose brother was killed, who was found dead in prison. What was it, like, I think in the Midwest, or the one who they said killed himself but was beaten to a pulp, and he might have had some information in regards to McVeigh and
that's
fighting
been
the
an
FBI for 30
battle,
years.
right?
Yeah. So I guess Trenadu and another guy, Ken Silva, who does great research, told Booth to tone it down, and he basically said, "Fuck these guys, I'm done with them." And yeah, he's like, "I am the king. I'm this." I'm like, is this guy like on fucking drugs or something? Like, I mean, he went scorched because even Dana had tweeted, said, "What do you hope to get out of this? Like, what's your
end game here, buddy?"
But yeah, he's trashed
Sherry
Seymour. He says that she's an FBI informant. I said, this is like this is like first generation JFK assassination, what COINTELPRO sort of thing, where it's like everybody starts to distrust each other. There starts to be just like nothing but attacks, and nobody knows who to trust. Mirage men, like there's just weird shit going on. And is it just? And I like Wendy Painting's book, but I said if I had issues with her, I said I would say something, but I stay out of this shit. But it was just crazy because left and right posts today, this guy was going on.
I like your style, sir. It's best not to get involved in these shenanigans, right?
Yeah. It's
there's these matters though that seem to get pretty contentious, and these folks get a real butthurt.
Yeah, the only one I like watching is when Dana goes after Manny Grossman, because Manny Grossman just seems like a guy who loves alienating everybody in his research.
I not only love that statement, but I also have no idea what you're talking about, sir. But back to the Oklahoma City bombing, you were mentioning that Clinton book earlier. So what was the theory there on the Oklahoma City stuff?
It was one of the first time I ever saw the name Andreas Strassmere and Elohim City, and what was it, Bob Millar and Carol Howe, and it kind of talks about that whole thing. I never knew. I mean, that was like first for me because I had questions. I was only 14 when Oklahoma City happened, but certain things didn't seem right. We went from the news that first day saying they thought it was like Islamic Jihad. That was like the first day. And then McVeigh gets arrested and they're like, oh, so we're going a completely different direction. And then, it was just my first kind of like eye-opening, aspect to Oklahoma City. And they were saying, yes, it was possibly like a sting gone bad. And then that basically what happened to Howe afterwards, where she was kind of disavowed. And I think, they threw her under the bus. And I think that continued until her death this year, which got buried until, who was it? The guy who wrote The Men Who Stare at Goats, John Ronson, who loves love
I almost
shitting
beat
on
you
anyone
to. I
who
almost beat you
compares
to
to
it, sir. I almost got you.
You did.
You barely got me, Phil. I thought I had a book title before you for a second. The Dewey Decimal System wins again, sir. No, I think I'm gonna have to check out that book. That sounds very fascinating. If I may circle this back to Orinthal J. Simpson and Cocaine Bob Evans and gang, right? So
yes.
the what was the name of that book again?
The Secret Life.
I forgot to bookmark it.
The Secret Life of Bill Clinton.
There we go. Thank you, sir. Let me make sure I save that here before I forget again. This sounds very fascinating. So I am interested in a lot of those aspects on whether or not I believe there was we messed up. Okay, thanks, but thanks for playing FBI. But you know what I mean. But I am interested in some of these perspectives because there is a lot going on that's very relevant today here still with a lot of these matters, and it's Old Furman that interests me relative to the Idaho situation, the OJ situation, et cetera. And again, and again, his connection to the order, which connects to the Elohim City stuff, right? So in Operation Patcon and Randy Weaver, part of the Material Assistance Command of Bill Colby, and Bill Colby's son testifying against Orinthal James Simpson. It's the epicenter of these activities that concern me, right? And again, it's the throughput seems to be the cocaine trafficking in and around Cocaine Bob Evans, right?
Yep.
So yeah, I do find those things very odd, and I wanted to play a couple of videos here to leave it back in here for us and close it out. And I do appreciate both your gents' times this evening and conversation. Absolutely. It's been a real barn burner. Seems like folks at the interwebs have enjoyed it. However, I fell so far behind on comments. I'm not sure if folks are commenting anymore, but I do appreciate the folks at the interwebs comments that I could keep up on before I do apologize. But the clips I wanted to play. So I mentioned Jody Sweeten before, and this whole Full House and the LA riots we're currently seeing pop off. You know, I think there is an aspect of you're an out of work actor, and it is a paying gig, right? But it does concern me, considering Cocaine Bob's relations to, brokering the marriage between Roman Polanski and Sharon Tate, and he seems like he was a processing himself, right? I think that's what Maury Terry was kind of asserting there in The Ultimate Evil, that he was at the upper echelon of whatever this cult activity was that was connected to the Son of Sam, that connected to Charles Manson and spawned from coast to coast in multiple decades, right? In The Ultimate Evil, right? So that epicenter of activity hero on in the OJ Simpson situation, right? And then again, the deep connections of all these things with the officers on that case to the Manson situation. It's Van Adder, the lead detective in Simpson, that arrests Polanski for that raping back in '77.
Shit.
He would later claim, well, me and Roman are friends now, so he can go fuck. I mean, in death, he can go fuck himself. It's strange. I went deep on Van Adder recently. I didn't realize he was one of those Van Adders. So, my clan Vance here, we hail from Logan County, West Virginia, where my forefather Abner Vance was the settler there back in the late 18th century. And right around that same time in Logan County, what is now within Virginia, now West Virginia, a fellow by the name of John Van Adder settled there as well. And those Van Adders intermarried with my clan Vance over the generations, where I have a lot of cousins named Van Adder, and they're all cousins to Philip Van Adder. So that got weird this week when I discovered that one. But it is these epicenter of all these people out there, and it's strange. So Van Adder's father, grandfather, forefather, etc., is all from Logan, Lincoln County there in West Virginia, and right across the river, you have Charles Manson hailing from right there too. It's just a weird epicenter of activity to find these folks involved in business in Los Angeles, right? But relative to these videos here, it is that epicenter of activity with Manson and Cocaine Bob and the Tate Polanski house, which again has its connections to Idaho as well, because Sharon Tate, the victim there on Cielo Drive, her father was U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel Paul Tate, and he would famously go undercover in 1970 investigating his daughter's murder by growing his hair out long, a beard, and infiltrating the hippie scene. His protege was U.S. Army intelligence officer who would apparently assist him. That man's daughter tells a story how her father would travel through numerous assignments as the protege to Colonel Paul Tate, and in 1970 they would move to the Bay Area, where her father would go undercover for the next few years, and she wouldn't see him. I would argue he was assisting his boss, Colonel Paul Tate, in the investigation of the murder of Sharon Tate. That woman, I call her the Gooch, Idaho State Police Detective Victoria Gooch. She is the most integral character in the case against the framed up case against Patsy Brian Koberger and the 4 homicides that occurred 11/13/2022 in Moscow, Idaho. So to say this character, there's not these weird connections again between all these scenes. It's, you know, it's just too much, Phil. It's too much. But
yeah,
we see that same Cielo Drive property being purchased in 1994 by the executive producer for Full House,
Jeff Franklin. Yeah.
Jeff Franklin, yes, sir. He would then purchase, or he would build a monstrous home on the property after destroying the original home where the murders occurred. And after kicking Trent Reznor and Marilyn Manson out of the property, because he was residing there at the time, they were renting. And, you know, Marilyn Manson lives there today again, strangely enough. And in the basement of that property, owned by the executive producer of Full House, where Marilyn Manson lives again, is a museum to Elvis Presley. And if that's not a deep connection to Elvis and the Manson situation, I have a brief clip here to emphasize just how much Elvis and old Chuck know each other. And maybe, in fact, Charles Manson was not lying to his buddy Michael Moynihan, as kind of his autobiographer, if you will, there, when he made that statement back in 1995 that he used to live on Elvis's house, because the Bel Air house that Elvis owned there in the Beverly Hills, about 4 miles away from the Cielo Drive home. So not that far away. But I you know, maybe that happened. Maybe Charles Manson kicked Elvis's punk ass out to the curb like he claimed, right?
In 1969, when Charles Manson kills Sharon Tate and all those people up there, remember? Scared him to death. He armed every one of us. That's when it became very paranoid. And then we get the death threat in Las Vegas. And he has this picture of Manson in that courtroom, and he's picturing someone like that sitting in a courtroom that their claim to fame was they had shot and killed Elvis Presley. And he took Jerry and Red and myself, who were doing the security mainly at that time, and said, tearfully, if it happens, I want you to get to him first. I don't deserve to be shot, killed by anybody. And then he told us what he wanted us to do to him.
You know, kind of weird, right? For these weird, if they didn't know each other, why is he gearing up so much? He was about something, right?
Yeah. Well, they were talking about,
and again, that relationship with his. Oh, go ahead.
And I was saying, like, in the wake of the Tate murders, is how, like, you know, Hollywood all of a sudden they were like, yep, we got to start arming, we got to start getting guard dogs, you know, this and that, and, you know, it's like, well, was it because you just thought it was a random
at the forefront of that, right? I'm cutting now. Go ahead. I was just saying, look, making those statements, right? Steve McQueen, Peter Sellers,
Steve McQueen,
right?
Yep.
Yeah. You mean the guy that was clearly in some weird sexual relations with Cocaine Bob and his wife, Allie McGraw? That's Steve McQueen?
Yep, and that at one point there was consideration of having McQueen killed.
I have no doubt. You know what's funny? He also hails from the same region of West Virginia as Philip Van Adder and right across the river from Charles Manson, strangely enough. Shit. That's for those. I know that because I also got McQueens in my family. In fact, we call her, so my second great grandmother dropped the Mick and just went with Queen, but it's the same family there, and they all hail from that region of Appalachia. That's what I'm saying. There's a lot of weird stuff there within all these folks going back to that specific area of Appalachia. Seems like possibly an older dispute, but nonetheless, it's an odd epicenter of activity, Phil. And when we're going back to the Full House stuff and Cocaine Bob and Jodie Sweetin, so when I see Jodie Sweetin out there doing this stuff,
with a battery until it's full, you should step back. Can you give a shout to cutscene? What? Me, shout to cutscene. Me. What's up? Hey man, what's up? You're doing a good job.
You know, when I see that stuff and I see, the Jeff Franklin purchasing the Cielo Drive property and letting, clearly it's not really a change of, it's a change of ownership and, the physical structure, but, again, Marilyn Manson was living there before and he's living there again. So what changed, then I see, the Full House. I don't know if you recall. I mean, sounds like we're the same age there, Phil. I believe we've discussed this before as well. That we're roughly the same age, the same as Nick is. We're all approximately the same age. Y'all remember Full House? Growing up, there was the Beach Boys were prominently on that show. It seemed like that was a kind of a theme, right? Charles Manson's friend, the Beach Boys.
Yeah, and Stamos drummed for them too. Like he was in the Kokomo video. On the,
you mean the one? You mean the video of the song written by Terry Melcher?
Charles Manson's friend.
He was co-writer of Kokomo along with the Wilson Boys. Charles Manson's friends.
That's crazy.
The guy that lived at Cielo Drive, right? And then I see all these photos with Cocaine Bob over the years. He's really chummy and likes to hug around that Full House cast a lot. I'll tell you this much.
That's crazy.
Here he is with these fellas. So, when I see these things relative to the whole narrative of Elvis, Cielo Drive, the Manson family, and nonetheless Cocaine Bob, I see Jody Sweden out there. I'm like, process. People got to process, Phil. They got to create chaos.
Jody Sweden used to have a hell of a drug habit too. I think she was like
you ain't kidding.
Big meth addict. I think something like that.
Yeah, don't she get whole new teeth and stuff and everything, right? She got a whole new grill, right? That's how bad it got, right?
Yep. And two other things. I still think Saget's death is very, very weird. And
I think Saget's life is very weird, sir. Let alone his death.
Well, yeah. And then what was it? Franklin got Me Too'd off the Fuller House, off the spinoff.
Is that a power move within the cult system?
Possibly. I mean, they said inappropriate behavior, which is a very wide spectrum. Are we talking Harvey Weinstein inappropriate? Are we talking Joss Whedon, or are we talking like Jeffrey Tambor? What exactly on the spectrum of inappropriate are we talking about? Are you just an asshole, or are you just someone who has inappropriate contact? I said that's
whatever happened to Dave Coulier?
Cancer. I know that.
Oh no shit! Is he dead? He died.
No, he's alive. But if we're talking inappropriate, about when did he start seeing Alanis Morissette?
Too many bear claws. He's Canadian. He had too many bear claws lodged right here. Like Chris Farley did.
Yo, he was
he
was young, right?
She wrote the song "You Ought to Know." That's about Dave Coulier.
No shit. Alanis Morissette, huh?
Because he was
You're a wealth of knowledge, sir. I had no idea of that.
Nickelodeon. So Nickelodeon, Dave Coulier had a show. Alanis Morissette was on You Can't Do That on Television for like about a year.
Yeah. Well,
she's
how disgusting is that show in hindsight, if I may?
Considering the Nickelodeon legacy. I mean, people think it started
They're dropping green goo over all these kids. Dude, get out of town, dude. It's a bukkake fest of sorts.
If you go back and look at some of that shit, you're like, yo, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
Yep. It's
I'm creeped out. I'm creeped out thinking about it. You know what I mean?
Well, and that's what I just watched. What was it? It was only through another podcast, video, the Quiet on the Set, when they were talking about Dan Schneider, and it was like, yeah, no, I guarantee he wasn't the only one. But I said, yeah, it don't look good. I mean, you see the Ariana Grande stuff. I had already read.
Oh God, dude. All them kids are a mess, right? Here's my problem with the Dan Schneider tale. I admit he's obviously a full-blown creepster, but that whole narrative relative to Amanda Bynes deters everybody from a very, very important factor in the downturn and disaster that became Amanda Bynes' life. And that is, for many years, she was very close friends, many photographs, tabloids, etc., with a fellow by the name of JJ Bryan. They were inseparable for about 4.5 years. He was the leader of a neo-process church offshoot cult known as Victorianism. And he started that after he worked as the assistant for Major General retired Air Force Brent Scowcroft, the right-hand man of Henry Kissinger. So he went from, Scowcroft was also National Security Advisor as well. So this dude goes from assistant, and Gerald Ford, so multiple times, much like his pal Kissinger, multiple times. So this dude goes from being Scowcroft's assistant to being like, I'm going to go start this process church offshoot. And then I'm going to go be really good friends with Amanda Bynes. I'm not going to say he was controlling her, but you look at the photographs. You decide. You look at it. I'm not saying you, Phil. I'm saying folks of the interwebs. Don't take my word for it. Just go look at these photos. You'd make your own decisions. And I'm just saying, Dan Schneider obviously not good for Amanda Bynes' downturn, but let's also look at some other factors that may have contributed. JJ Bryan and perhaps she was a member of this neo process movement, like them Nexium girls in the Smallville show, right?
Well, there was just to add a point. There's something with certain these kid actors, and then there was one. There's an actor, Andrew Keegan, who was in 10 Things I Hate About You. He was in, I think, you
talking about that weird cult he made out there in Santa Monica?
Yep.
Oh shit!
100%.
Please do. I love this story.
I mean, I forget what the cult's name was, but I just remember seeing him. I'm like, yeah, that's sort of.
Yeah, but that's a great example. He was like an A-lister, but he was this main, like, kind of heartthrob character of 10 Things I Hate About You. He did some other stuff, right?
He was in a modern. He was in another movie with Julia Stiles, and it was called O, and it was like an Othello, modern day Othello, and it was what's his name, Mekhi Phifer and Josh Hartnett.
Yeah, I totally forgot about this, dude. I'm glad you brought this up. I like this story. Andrew Keegan, right?
Yep.
Yeah, you'll recognize his face, Nick. I mean, like, his name's not notable, but he was in enough shit. You're like, oh, that dude.
Yep.
I was about to say he's got to have a Wikipedia, the source of all information on the interwebs.
Yeah.
He does.
Sounds familiar, the name.
Yeah, I can't think of the other movies. He definitely did some more of those 90s teen films, right? He was a 90s teen guy. This guy.
I mean, now it looks like shit, but yeah, I mean, you see, nowhere.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug, Phil.
Yeah.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
Oh, and he was
so is Jesus.
Heaven.
Apparently, this guy's got his own, like, again, when I say Jesus, I mean, he's got his own version of, I think he's Jesus, kind of like Jared Leto's Jesus, you know what I mean? That kind of thing. He's got that. That's the dynamic of his cult, as I recall. Jared Leto's got his Jesus cult, like where he's Jesus. My understanding, that's the deal here with this guy's as well.
I find it funny.
I don't know if he's explicitly Jesus, but he wears the white, you know what I mean? He's doing the whole Son of God routine, right?
I see Seventh Heaven on there, and that had a
there we go. Camp Nowhere. That's what I was thinking of. Camp Nowhere. Christopher Lloyd. Yeah. Jonathan Jackson. Jessica Alba, right? We got a lot of stars in this one. They were early stars, right? Anyway, so he's cult, though. Was it very interesting? So after Hollywood, right, which was early 2000s, I think he leaves, right? Oh, shit. He was a Sabrina the Teenage Witch show, dude. Get out of town, dude.
Shit.
Melissa Joan Hart. Dude, he did a Full House episode. Holy smokes. Look at that. Look at that.
Love interest for Jodie Sweetin's character.
Dude, he was in Independence Day, dude. I don't know which one that was, Bill Paxton or Bill Pullman. Whichever one it was, they did a great job.
Hey, Spaceballs 2 is coming out. That's all I got to say.
No, is it really?
Dude.
Is it
I'm
really?
hyped. Dude, Moranis is coming out of retirement.
Yep. Rick Moranis is coming out of retirement.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
Who's making the movie?
Mel Brooks is going to make it.
Yeah,
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, John Candy's reprising his role as Barf.
Get the fuck out of here. No.
I am making that up. I
was like, wait, that motherfucker's dead, bro.
It's a 3D hologram. It's like that Tupac hologram. It's 3D hologram. No, I mean, I'll also watch it. I mean, it's not gonna be quite the same without Barf, but I mean, you know.
Don't be surprised they want to put in, like, I mean, I just saw, I think what's his name is involved. I think Josh Gad is involved with that.
I just got a little soured on it, Phil. A little soured on it. He wrote it. Is he gonna? I know he was involved in writing the screenplay, but is he acting in it? Because he's not a good actor.
I wouldn't be surprised if he winds up acting in it.
Yeah, that's what I'm afraid of.
Wouldn't be surprised.
That's what I'm afraid of. Strangely enough, here that Wikipedia, the source of all information on the interwebs, does not list Andrew Keegan's cult. So let me look that up for us here. Oh well, that's why, because it's not a cult. It says right here, Phil, it's not a cult. It says it's a community center. So that's where I erred, right? I was searching for cult. It's a community center. It's called Full Circle, right? And again, it's very it's like looking at the he bought this place right on the Santa Monica boardwalk, right? Or is it Venice Beach? Mm-hmm. Let me look here. Anyway, it's right in the mix of like the old school new agey thing. And I think this is actually, if I remember correctly, at one point in time years ago served as some new age cult in its previous iteration of this building. What I'm saying is it's almost like they're one folds up and they're like, well, we got to find me a new low rent actor. He was a B-rate actor from the 90s. Well, kid, I got a new job for you. You're Jesus in this new cult on Santa Monica Boulevard. Look, bud, it's a paying gig. I don't give a shit if your friend Jody Sweeten's got the riot detail. You're getting the Jesus detail. That's kind of the way I look at it.
Starring role. You don't have to worry about being typecast anymore.
Like, look, dude, royalties of this, it's going to be endless for you, bud. We're just going to keep cutting you a check.
I mean, you get a check for $5 every week for 10 things I hate about you. Eventually, it's going to dry up.
No one likes that shit anymore. Heath Ledger, no one even knows the name Heath Ledger anymore, sadly. But see, I did like him. He's a good actor, but you know what I mean. But like, there's no way they're really playing that shit much. There's not much play out of that stuff. So this guy's looking for work, and I don't say that in a completely being a shithead about it, but like, when Bill Cosby got busted for all the Jell-O pudding rapes. The cast of that show was living off of their royalties. They actually were getting royalties. So the fellow that played his son-in-law, Elvin or some sort of that,
who was working at a supermarket.
There you go. He started working at Trader Joe's, bud. So these things happen. I don't disrespect the man for having to do that. What I'm saying is, the royalties dried up because suddenly everyone's like, well, we can't do Aaron no Bill Raper shows, so we got to go find a job, bud. So there is an element to these actors and lack of royalties they may find that they're living off of and that suddenly no longer exists.
Yeah.
For various reasons. Not necessarily the rapings, but
well, you almost have to be like a united front on certain of these things. Like, what was it? Friends used to negotiate together for everything. And then Seinfeld, when Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Jason Alexander, Michael Richards heard about the deal that Larry David and Seinfeld cut for residuals and also DVD sales, they're like, we're getting a cut, but we're never doing anything further for the show.
Right. No, it's a strong move. It's a power move. I like it. I can respect that. Do you remember this film? I loved this film when I was a teenager.
Heard of it, never seen it.
Oh man, it's a mind fuck.
Well, Furlong fell far.
It's a total and it may have been as a result of this fucking movie, dude. I'm not making that up, dude. This is a mind fuck.
I mean, you see him now.
Let me bring this up for you. Do you remember this one, Nick?
No.
Oh man, I don't want to ruin your all's evening or cause any kind of disturbing thoughts, but this is a fucking weird movie, dude. I liked it. It just because it was, it's a thought-provoking film, and I like things that mess with reality in timelines like this, but it's fucked up, man. Let me just read a synopsis for you because I'm obviously not doing it any justice. But what caused this comment? I like the comment. I'm just curious what caused this. No, it was I don't know. Let me read this for you. After a car accident killed his mother and permanently injured his leg, teenager Michael Brower, Edward Furlong, lives an isolated existence in his absent father's house. He spends his spare time watching his neighbor and crush Kimberly, so that that kind of that the rear window situation, almost like a Hitchcock kind of situation, right? So not directly, but they're paying homage to that aspect in this horror film. A horror films and video games fan, Michael's only friend is a similar-minded misfit named Kyle. They are members of the school's horror club, which draws the principal's ire. After Kyle tells him about a new ultra-realistic game called Brain Scan, Michael mail orders the first disc. So this is 1994, right? So this is literally like, this is right when they put some CDs and some games on a CD, right? Like this is brand new shit for computers. So, he gets the this is a horrible synopsis they're running me on through, but so I'll give you the better one. So he puts the disc in and plays the game, and it suddenly takes him into an alternate reality, but he doesn't realize, spoiler alert from a 1994 film, folks. He doesn't realize it, obviously, but he's spun into an alternate reality that he wakes up into, after playing this game, right? So he puts the game in, starts playing, and then, sees some almost like hypnotic imagery, right? And the next thing he knows, he's falling asleep, and he wakes up and he's in again, he doesn't realize it, but it's a shifted reality, and it's a fucking, hellscape reality kind of deal, right? You know what I mean? And it's being dictated by this character he meets in the game. And it's eventually very haunting and et cetera, et cetera. But so it's not just the rear window aspects. They mashed together some very interesting horror, story aspects. But I recommend the film. It just, clear away your evening. Maybe it's just maybe watch it in the afternoon. I just remember watching it for the first time. It's not like I had nightmares, but I just remember being up like, holy fuck, that was like, like, for example, I went and saw the movie Inception at the theater, and then I walked out of the theater, walked right back in, saw Inception again, because I was like, what the fuck just happened?
I
You know what I mean?
Nice.
I had one of those kind
Nice.
of effects to it. You know what I mean? So it was a good film. I mean, and right, yeah, you're right. Right after that, Edward Furlong looks like an old lesbian now, like a middle-aged lesbian. You know, he's not aged well.
Yeah, he kind of like Axl Rose to a degree.
Yeah.
Like Axl-
Are they twins? Because cocaine's a hell of a drug, apparently.
Well, have you seen the picture of like someone was like, when did Axl Rose turn into Mama Fratelli from the Goonies? You know, and they showed the picture together, and it was like, oh my god,
Yeah, Mickey
bad.
Rourke and Axl Rose. Yeah, they're rough, man. They're real rough.
Oh, Mickey Rourke, holy shit! Yeah.
Have you seen that photo with those two together? They look like an old lesbian couple.
Yeah, they do. They definitely do.
Yeah,
Actually.
You know, they have a couple cats. They knit some sweaters together on the porch. You know, that's what they look like. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they showed a picture. I think it was like a horror convention, and it was like people from Terminator. It was like Robert Patrick, you know, T2 from the T1000 from T2.
Kind of the height of his career, right?
Yep.
Kind of the height of his career.
I don't know. He's been in a lot of. I mean, he was in Sons of Anarchy, and like he's been around.
That was my nice way of saying he's a terrible actor. But yeah, I've seen him around, yes, sir.
And his brother was in the group Filter. He was the lead singer of Filter.
That's right.
And but
hey man, nice shot, right?
Who was in them?
Wasn't that their single Filter? Hey man, nice shot. Wasn't
Hey
that
man,
jam?
nice shot. Yep, that was that. Because Richard Patrick, the brother, was also, I think, in 9 Inch Nails. I think at one point, or at least I know he was connected with Trent Reznor. But yeah,
I did not know that. I did not know that. That's interesting.
There's a picture. Yeah, it's Edward Furlong, Lance Henriksen, who was in the first Terminator, but was also in Aliens and tons of other shit. Who's like 80-something years old now. Michael Biehn, who was Kyle Reese from.
Dude, he was a big star. Like they had a lot of hopes for him. He was an alien too, right?
Yep, he was an alien. So he was in Aliens with Lance Henriksen, and
he was in Tombstone. You know, he was.
Yes,
he was. Like, I'm not gonna be your Huckleberry.
Yep, and he's the one who said later on about Val Kilmer is like I wish I'd worked with him. I knew Doc Holliday, you know, like I guess Val Kilmer was into. Holy shit! Oh yeah, holy shit! I mean, that's
look, Phil. They're just a couple. They're just an old aging lesbian couple. Let's leave them be. Let's leave them be. Well, look at the cocaine does to these fellas. I mean, that's a fucking hell of a drug.
Oh gosh, yeah,
it's rough, real rough.
Well, another cocaine Bob connection. Who was one of his good buddies? Slash.
You ain't kidding. They were next door neighbors. You ain't kidding, sir. They were real tight.
And he put in Kid Notorious, the Comedy Central show that got bounced after a season.
No, there's lots of photos with him. Like if I was to give you an analysis of all the photographs I've looked at, and I looked at a lot of Cocaine Bob, you know, from various events and whatnot, I'll tell you two things. Him and Slash were real tight, and he liked to kiss Brett Ratner. Him and Brett Ratner liked to smooch. They smooched a lot. Them boys were smooching everywhere.
Another Me Too guy, Brett Ratner.
Well, he's also the long-term business partner and production co-owner of the production company with Steve Mnuchin. You know, Skull and Bonesman and Treasury Secretary during the first Trump administration.
Yep.
It's a weird epicenter of activity. When you're smooching on Steve Mnuchin's business partner here, buddy, I don't know what's going on in life, but it's a weird epicenter of activity. Cocaine Bob is always at it, though, right?
Said even dead, he's still at it.
Even in death, he's got his minions, Graydon Carter, Barry Diller. You know, these characters, they're out there doing the bidding, I would argue, of old Cocaine Bob.
Now, Graydon Carter, is that Vanity Fair?
He came from Vanity Fair, yes, sir. He's the one who founded Airmail and employs Howard Bloom in regards to the Idaho 4 business.
Well, Vanity Fair had a guy, I think it was Ron Rosenbaum, who wound up writing a book, wrote an article about Danny Casolaro trying to say that, you know, he got obsessed with the case and then killed himself.
No shit.
You know, he went, and then said that he did the slashes on the wrist to represent the octopus. It was a real reach, but not a surprise.
Real reach. It was a real reach around. Am I back?
Oh, he froze.
You're back.
Oh, am I back? Am I back?
Yeah.
Back again.
Well, that may be a good time to call it in here, folks. Bring us in for Lane and folks at the interwebs and gents. I appreciate your time. Phil, I'm obviously going to tell you I'm going to need to go ahead and get after the show, in the near future, get our calendars together for a future appearance back here on Fridays, because I'm not going to lie to you, sir. Again, I got nothing but notes and details, and I enjoy every minute of these conversations, and I greatly appreciate your time.
I appreciate it.
Did you freeze again?
He froze again.
Yeah, it's definitely time to wrap it up. Oh boy.
It's getting a little silly. It's getting a little silly. Am I back? All right.
You're back.
If I may offer you some closing statements, take your, by all means, as many statements as you need to. Anything you want to wrap up tonight, or any statements you'd like to make there, Phil?
Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
Cocaine is a hell of a drug. It's a very accurate statement. Very accurate statement. Seriously, lots of great stuff. And any other closing statements for anything you want to sum up? You put a bookend on, maybe.
Just
anything you want to recommend folks check out, maybe anything you're working on blog wise, anything like that, or
I'm always reading something, but right now I think my next conspiracy anything book that I'm doing, I was reading a book about Howard Hughes, and I know that's a big topic. I know Heidi loves that. Yeah, and actually, it just told her about a book I was doing for a review. It's called The Mormon Mafia and Me, about a guy who's suing the LDS Church in regards to stealing his family's fortune and disinheriting him out of $250 million.
What I'm hearing you say, sir, is the next time you're here, Heidi will be here. We'll be discussing some Mormon business as well.
Sounds good to me.
I'm extending the invite. Obviously, you're welcome to decline, but I don't know that story, and I'm I'm an ex-Mo myself, so this all sounds very intriguing to me. And so, are you doing a review on this on your blog? Then is that the?
I actually reviewed it for one of the review companies, and it's an interesting case. Eliason is the guy's last name. His name is Brett Eliason, Eliason. I did reach out to Heidi and let her know she wasn't familiar with it either. But the guy's not only suing the LDS Church and a law firm that represented his family, he also has brought in, I think he's sued the Justice Department too. Like the accusations
suing
are
everybody.
Large,
suing everybody, it sounds like. Can you spell this name for me? Is it Eliason?
Yep, you got it.
He's not a former member of Pearl Jam, is he?
No.
Because there's a former member of Pearl Jam by that precise same name. Spelling.
Which would be news to me, because I know all the guys in Pearl. The only members of Pearl Jam that's ever changed was the drummer.
That would be new to me. Studio guy, maybe.
That'd probably
look here. Yeah, well, I'll look into see if it's the same. It'd be weird if it's the same guy, right? That'd be really weird, right? He was I don't know. He had some maybe it was a studio, maybe it was a he had some maybe it was a production aspect to it. He was connected to a long time associate of Pearl Jam with a guy by that name. So he was in the film Singles with Pearl Jam. Like I don't remember.
Oh, nice.
I don't want to say he was like, I don't want to call him the synthesizer or the cymbals guy, but like he was something of that ilk, right?
Yeah, not a main guy, but good. Maybe like you said, studio musician, session musician.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, something. But enough to when the band was in the film Singles, he's in the scene.
Okay.
So that's and you did that review for a publisher that's not available on your blog then, huh?
No, and I don't know if they published it yet. But it was for one of their one of the review companies, because a lot of times like I'll have to go look it up and see if they've done it yet or whatnot and what they've edited or whatnot. But it's US Book Review. They're one that they're good. I've been with them for like 3 years, and that's it. And the book is basically presents like it's a legal case, and it kind of just, he's like the youngest of 3 kids. He accuses his sister. His sister is like one of the people he accuses of helping disinherit him and attempt murdering his mom.
Well, I don't know much about the Curtin McConkie law firm other than McConkie's are a former, that's the hierarchy of the upper echelon of the Mormon church right there. So I'm not sure if they're the wisest people to take a battle against too. So this is an interesting tale, it sounds like, and it sounds like one with a lot of Mormon power behind it.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those, I mean, definitely like a David and Goliath sort of thing, like where
no shit, right.
Don't know if he's going to get anything out of it, but yeah, I mean, it's broken him from the rest of his family, and I mean, he levies some very serious charges against his own sister.
Does this have anything to do with who were the fellas there we were talking about before, Nick? The Levitts.
Yeah.
Oh, I've heard of those guys. I think those are the guys that.
Is it David Levitt?
Yeah, well, one of them was the governor. The one that was not the governor was the brother. That was the Utah County prosecutor that was had the press conference. Like, hey, my wife and I don't eat kids. And we're like, no one asked you if you ate kids, buddy. Why you holding a press conference?
Yeah, he told on himself, and then they looked into him.
Yeah, dude.
Like, yo, why are you even saying that?
Yeah, what a weird thing to say, sir. Why are you telling us this?
There's just such weird things inside that. I mean, in that church, I mean, just in terms of the scandals are always insane. I still got to watch Under the Banner of Heaven? The one that they did. Have you
seen the one on Mark Hoffman?
I saw the Netflix on Hoffman.
Yeah, there's a lot to that tale.
I remember hearing about, what was it, with the hand, with breaking his hand or whatever it was, that he couldn't write anymore, couldn't do forgeries or whatnot. But I was watching that FX miniseries Under the Banner of Heaven about the wife and child that were killed, and it was like, I think it was like the brothers-in-law, I think, wound up being involved or something like that. I think it was in the 80s,
it's not
late 70s.
They're no, folks a lot of like to point fingers at the Catholics and the Vatican, but they're the mothership, as I call them in Salt Lake, they got a lot of scandals themselves, right?
Yeah, it's definitely interesting.
But we can talk about some Mormon stuff in the future. I'm always happy to do that, sir. So I appreciate your time there, Phil. And if I may ask, Nick, you have any closing statements, thoughts, or anything you'd like to plug, or you maybe sing us a song?
Oh no, you're not gonna want that, especially not now. No, nothing really. A lot of stuff again, Phil. Whenever you come on, it's just tons and tons of shit. I always appreciate it. Had a good time. The chat was awesome. That's what's up. Yeah, I'll just plug the Occult Rejects. All major podcasts, BitChute, Rumble, all that stuff. Yeah,
there you go.
YouTube. Yes.
Well, I appreciate your gents' time and discourse conversation here for another outstanding Fridays, and folks of the interwebs. Same to you. Appreciate the chat and the folks here. And hopefully, you found this as entertaining as I did, because I definitely enjoyed the conversation and had a great time there, both you gents. And Operation GCD Sundays. May or may not have eaten human meat burgers. Come find out. 8 p.m. Eastern times. And on that note, I will leave it on that. Thank you all again.
Well, that's it. That's the show here, folks. So the next time you're out on the town, visiting your local watering holes, or perhaps just meandering around, and you hear the unmistakable sounds of metal clanking, and you spot signs of a disturbance, but check your six. Look in that garbage can, 'cause you never can tell. The GCDs may be loose in your town.